Chapter 7288. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and there was not the slightest bit of panic on her face. A dazzling seven-colored light burst out from her body, directly shattering the sword light that covered the sky and the earth. After blocking the attack, Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes suddenly emitted a demonic brilliance. "Don't look at her eyes," for immediately reminded him when he noticed this. He had suffered such a loss at the hands of Di Beichen. However, his warning was still a step too late. The bewitching eyes were like the summons of an evil spirit, and an illusion that had been set up for a long time instantly enveloped Old Third. Old Third's originally clear eyes quickly flashed with a hint of doubt and confusion. Screech! When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that her opponent had fallen into the illusion, she moved like a ghost and instantly appeared in front of the man. The thought's severing sword was shrouded in a dazzling seven-colored radiance. With an extremely ruthless stance, it pierced through the man's throat. "Be careful!" Fourth brother saw that the situation was not good and quickly rushed forward. Although he had already taken the pill, his strength was still affected. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. She only had one chance to strike. Although the effect of the illusion was strong, the other party's cultivation was higher than hers. Even if she could trap him, it would not last long. "Go!" With a clear cry, Xiaohe shot out like a pebble from Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. She quickly grew in size in midair, and Xiaohe charged towards OL4. The sudden change was beyond OL4's expectations. He almost subconsciously wanted to dodge, but by the time he reacted, the figure had already swept to another place. Chia's soft voice sounded. It was almost inaudible in this noisy environment, but it made Old Four's expression change instantly. Bang! The man's body fell down heavily. Bailey Hongzhuang's cold eyes revealed a murderous aura. Getting rid of one person would at least lessen the pressure on them. Third brother. The man's pupils shrank as grief engulfed him. He could not believe that his third brother had fallen in such a short time. How could this be? Xiao Soa looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. She realized that a confrontation of this level was not something she could participate in. That woman who had been crushed by her back then had now risen to such a terrifying level. Qing Devil also noticed a movement behind him. He raised his eyebrows unconsciously and said to himself, "Trash!" Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground was heard, followed by a series of muffled groans. "Third brother, what's going on?" Two figures quickly rushed over. It was the first brother and second brother who went to capture Di Xiaofeng's group. When foresaw the two coming, the grief between his eyebrows deepened. Then he raised his head and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely. "It's this woman. She killed third brother." When Di Xiaofeng and the others who were captured heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had already gotten rid of one person, a trace of surprise appeared in their eyes. "Hongzhuang, good job." Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with a luster of worship. Hongzhuang was the person she admired the most. When Bailey Hongzhuang noticed the situation of Di Xiaofeng and the others, she could not help but frown. Her clear eyes revealed a look of worry. The two of them did not hold back at all. With just a glance, she noticed that almost everyone had suffered heavy injuries. Chapter 7289. I can't let this go on. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. Previously, two of them were not here because they were chasing after the others. Now that the two of them had returned, there were four of them, including Qing Devil. Even though she had killed one of them, the situation was still not optimistic. "Bastard! I'm going to kill her and bury her with third brother." Second brother quickly rushed over and punched out fiercely. Yellow light gathered crazily under his fist and turned into a yellow light beam that whizzed out. Earth-shattering demonic fist. At the same time, eldest brother suddenly brandished his long spear. A dazzling golden light circled around the long spear like a divine dragon. A fierce and shocking aura rose sharply with the wind. "Bastard! These two fellows are joining forces to fight Hongzhuang." Shangguan Yingying was unwilling to accept this. Even though Hongzhuang was very powerful, It was already difficult for her to deal with one person, let alone two people joining forces. She subconsciously wanted to stand up. However, the excruciating pain in her body made her break out in cold sweat. It was not until she fought with these two people that she realized the difference in strength between the Radiant Sun stage and the elementary Celestial stage. With just one move, several of her bones had been broken. She was almost powerless to fight back. Damn it! Zyron's eyes were full of annoyance and unwillingness. In this situation, not only could he not be of any help, he had become a burden. As members of the Beast Clan, Bali Yin, Shay, and Linger's injuries were not as serious as Zyron's, but they were not much better. Most importantly, they knew that if they rushed forward in this situation, they would not be of any help to Hongzhuang. On the contrary, they would make her worry about them. They could only think of other ways. Bailey Hongzhuang watched as the two people attacked her rapidly. Her hand seals changed rapidly and colorful light shone brightly. Dark shadow, glazed pagoda, a pagoda that was thousands of feet tall, suddenly appeared in midair. It was shining with a magnificent and dazzling colorful light. If one took a closer look, one would find that there was a black light floating in the colorful pagoda. The black light was like a shadow, reaching all the way to the top of the pagoda. Bang! An earth-shattering sound reverberated, and the three rays of light exploded, like fireworks blooming in midair, but the scattered aftershock almost flattened all the surrounding buildings. As the dust settled, Bailey Hongzhuang fell heavily to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her devastatingly beautiful face was dyed pale, adding a trace of weakness. The trace of dark red at the corner of her lips emitted an almost bewitching beauty. Bailey Hongzhuang looked coldly at the two of them and sighed. As expected, it's still not enough. She had just stepped into the elementary celestial stage not long ago. She, who had yet to set foot in the celestial domain, had not learned any corresponding martial techniques. The only thing she could use was her ultimate technique. Unfortunately, when facing the experts of the immortal realm, this level of martial arts was still a level weaker. Big Brother and Second Brother looked at each other. They could see the fear in each other's eyes. At first, they thought that with the two of them working together, the other party would have no chance at all. However, after exchanging blows, they were very clear in their hearts that if it wasn't for the fact that this woman didn't know enough martial arts, and if it was the martial arts of the immortal realm, they probably wouldn't be like this now. What kind of freak was this? They looked up at the man who was retreating under Qing Devil's attack, but was still holding on. Their expressions changed involuntarily. The talents of these two people were too amazing. Their strength was not comparable to that of ordinary people in the elementary celestial stage. Chapter 7290. After Xiao So noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang was seriously injured, her eyes were filled with pride. Bailey Hongzhuang, to think that you would have such a day. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Xiao So coldly. Winner takes all. Today, they were one step behind. Unexpectedly, Qing Devil was the Oriole behind them. Weren't you very arrogant in front of me earlier? Let's see how arrogant you can be now. Xiao So, your smug look is really disgusting, Shangguan Yingying said in disgust. Xiao So turned to look at Shangguan Yingying. Her eyes were filled with malice as she said, Shangguan Yingying, do you really think you're something? I'll let you have a taste of humiliation. Bailey Hongzhuang was at the elementary immortal realm. Even though she was injured, she did not dare to get close to them. However, Shangguan Yingying was different. Seeing Xiao So approach with a venomous expression, Zyron couldn't help but ask, what do you want? I want her to have a taste of pain. Xiao So's eyes shone with a sinister light. She had been unhappy with Shangguan Yingying for a long time. Shangguan Yingying, a woman with no background, had always treated her coldly because of her relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Shangguan Yingying had fallen into her hands, she must make her pay the price. A dagger appeared in her hand. With a sinister smile, she approached Shangguan Yingying step by step. Seeing this, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but move back. This woman was completely insane. Xiao So, stop. Zyron blocked Shangguan Yingying's face. You? Xiao So sneered. Don't worry, I won't let any of you off. In the next moment, the dagger pierced Shangguan Yingying's thigh. Ah! Shangguan Yingying screamed as blood spurted out from her leg. The warm blood splashed onto Xiao Sou's face, but it only made her even more excited. This kind of enemy showing fear in front of her made her feel exceptionally happy. Xiao Sou stopped. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed this scene. Her eyes were suddenly dyed with a trace of bright red, and the veins on her temples throbbed. This crazy woman was indeed deranged. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang rose to her feet, Big Brother and a second brother stood in front of her and attacked her once again. If this woman wasn't dealt with as soon as possible, she would definitely become a huge threat in the future. Although they also thought that Xiao Sou was a petty person who got what she wanted, this woman had given birth to the Qing Devil's Child, so they couldn't say anything about it. Damn it! Bailey Hongzhuang had no choice but to block the incoming ferocious attack. She couldn't spare any attention to help. Bang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. Xiao Sou fell heavily to the ground. Xiao Sou, you're really a smelly bug. You're disgusting. Ling stared coldly at her. Her beautiful face was pale. She was already seriously injured, but compared to Shangguan Yingying and the others who couldn't move, she was in a much better condition. Now that she attacked, her injuries became even more serious. This woman would only show off when others were unable to move. Not to mention that Beichen already had Hongzhuang. Even if he did not, he would definitely not fall for such a woman. Bastard! Xiao Sou clutched her chest. She didn't expect Ling to be able to resist. It was only one move, but her internal organs were burning with pain. She had obviously suffered serious internal injuries. You control them. Xiao Sou looked at fourth brother and shouted coldly. Chapter 72-91. Old foresaw Xiao Sou looking at him arrogantly, and his brows unconsciously wrinkled. This woman really did not leave a good impression. He subconsciously looked at Qing Devil, who was in midair. At this moment, His Excellency obviously couldn't care about him at all. Even if he had a constable in his heart, he couldn't ignore it at this moment. The next moment, Old Four walked over and attacked Linger with his palm. Bang! A muffled groan escaped from Bai Li Yin Che's throat. Linger looked at the man who had suddenly appeared in front of her, and a look of intense anxiety surfaced in her eyes. Are you all right, Yin Che? Bai Li Yin Che looked at her anxious little face and shook his head with a smile. I'm fine. Linger's eyes reddened. Bai Li Yin Che's injuries were more serious than hers. Now that he had blocked such a blow, how could he be fine? Keep an eye on them. If anyone dares to move, kill them. Xiao Sou said. Yes. Xiao Sou's face was full of pride. She held the dagger and rushed in front of Linger. You're very proud, aren't you? At a time like this, there are still people who would risk their lives to save you. Isn't it all because of your face? You and Bailey Hongzhuang are the same. Both of you rely on your face to seduce men. I'll destroy your face now. Let's see if you can still seduce men. Xiao Sou approached Linger with a dagger in her hand. Bai Li Yin Che tried to stop her, but Lao Si had locked onto his aura, and he couldn't move at all. Give her a slap. Recalling the power of Linger's palm strike just now, Xiao Sou's eyes revealed a trace of fear. Who knew if this woman had other tricks up her sleeves? He had to eliminate all threats. Bang! Linger fell to the ground. Blood flowed from the corner of her lips. Her already pale face was now as white as a sheet of paper. Xiao Sou, if you want to kill someone, kill me first. Shangguan Yingying shouted with tears in her eyes. If it weren't for her, Linger wouldn't have been targeted by Xiao Sou. Shut up. Xiao Sou coldly glanced at Shangguan Yingying. Don't worry, you're next. Shua. A slight sound was heard. Linger's face was cut open, and warm blood flowed down. A trace of pain flashed through Linger's eyes, but she stubbornly remained silent. She understood that the pain and anguish at this moment would only make Xiao Sou feel better, and she would not give her the chance to do so. Boom! In midair, a figure fell heavily, and the whole ground seemed to shake. An astonishing aura spread out from the center of the fall, spreading rapidly like an earthquake. A hundreds of feet deep pit suddenly appeared, and the figures seemed to be buried by the huge pit. Di Beichun, today is the day you die." An arrogant and haughty voice rang out from the air. The azure demon stood in the air, looking down at them with disdain. One could even vaguely make out a trace of anger on his face. This guy, who was no more than an ant in his eyes, could hold on for so long in his hands. Fortunately, Qing Ji's death made him discover the existence of Di Beichen. Otherwise, he could not even imagine what would happen in the future. Di Xiaofeng and the others looked at the deep pit anxiously. They knew how much pressure Beichen was under when he fought with Qing Devil. The battle just now was so fierce, and the huge pit was so terrifying. Facing the cruel and ferocious Qing Devil, they did not dare to think about how Beichen was now. Was he still alive? Chapter 72-92. Bang! With a wave of his hand, Qing Devil lifted a huge rock weighing thousands of kilograms and threw it into the pit. Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't care less about the two men's attacks and quickly rushed towards a hole. She couldn't just watch as Beichen died. Even if they died, they had to die together. The boulder was pushed away by Bailey Hongzhuang with all her strength and smashed into the ground, turning into powder. Hongzhuang, sister. Bali Yin She and the others stared at the thin white figure with fear in their hearts. The two attacks behind her were mercilessly aimed at her. In an instant, that graceful figure fell down like a kite with a broken string. Tears flowed from their eyes unconsciously. Bali Yin She and the others only realized all this when they noticed the wetness on their cheeks. They had always known that as cultivators, there was a chance that they would meet with an accident and perish along the way. However, seeing the scene with his own eyes, the shock and pain in his heart could not be described with words. The pain that penetrated deep into their bones was like a devil's claw fiercely grabbing their hearts. With just a little bit of force, they would be drenched in blood. Roar. A roar that could destroy everything sounded from Bailey Yinch's throat. The surrounding people only felt that this sound wave was mixed with a shocking pressure, as if even breathing had become difficult. There were no demon beasts in the crossing celestial domain. This was what they learned after coming to the crossing immortal domain. This was a completely sealed area. Other than the immortals who had ascended, there were no other living beings. Even the dark attribute demons lived outside the crossing immortal region. Otherwise, they would not have fallen into such a situation. Moreover, the skeletons in the crossing celestial domain were all at the radiant sun stage or below. Even if they spent a lot of effort to summon these skeletons, how could they cause any trouble to the elementary celestial stage cultivators? When one's cultivation had reached a certain level, a group attack would not be effective. In the end, it was all because the Qing Devil appeared at the right time. Ta-ta! A faint sound of footsteps could be heard. After discovering the source of the sound, everyone could not help but look in the direction of the hole. Di Beichen slowly walked out of the hole with Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms. His pace was very slow, and his clothes were stained with blood. However, his hands that held Bailey Hongzhuang were firm and strong. Bailey Hongzhuang hooked her arm around Di Beichen's shoulder. Her gaze was gentle and affectionate, as if she could imprint him in her heart forever with just one more glance. When Shangwan, Yingying, and the others saw this scene, they almost choked with sobs. How could they not see that Beichen was already at the end of his rope, and Hongzhuang's situation was not optimistic after suffering such a blow? As long as we can all die together, that would be great. Di Xiaofeng's face revealed a touch of comfort. He looked at Bailey Yunyan beside him. Are you scared? Bailey Yunyan smiled faintly and shook her head. No. In this tragic atmosphere, Ling, and the others' faces bloomed with poignant and bright smiles. At least, they were all still together. This was already a good ending. Blood dyed Di Beichen's hands red. Wrapped in intense pain, it was as if he could no longer feel it. His heart was only filled with the beautiful woman in his arms. It was a pity that he could not protect her. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and looked at Di Beichen. Then, she looked at Di Xiaofeng and the others who were seriously injured behind her. A drop of crystal clear tear fell from the corner of her eye. I'm sorry, everyone. Chapter 72-93. I'm sorry, I can't let you all die together. Di Xiaofeng and the others almost instinctively frowned after hearing this. Before they understood what Bailey Hongzhuang meant, they felt their vision darken. When they opened their eyes again, it was a familiar room, but made their hearts turn cold. Oh no, Hongzhuang sent them back. When Xiren's expression turned ugly. It was only at this moment that he understood the meaning behind Hongzhuang's apology. She knew that she and Beichen would not be able to escape, so she sent them back. She had even exposed the secret of the Chaos Ring. How could this be? Shangguan Yingying sobbed. I want to go back. Calm down. Hongzhuang didn't hesitate to expose her secret to send us back. If we go back rashly, wouldn't we be letting down her painstaking efforts? Di Xiaofeng couldn't hide the sorrow on his face. He also wanted to go back, but he knew that he couldn't do it now. If Xiao So and Qing Devil joined hands, the Di family would definitely be in danger. Even if they were going to die, they had to send the news back first. Revenge was a dish best served cold. Perhaps in the future, they would still have hope of revenge. When Xiao So realized that the people in front of her had suddenly disappeared, a look of disbelief appeared in her eyes. Why did they disappear all of a sudden? Qing Devil's eyes lit up. After connecting what happened with what Bailey Hongzhuang said just now, he was almost sure that all this had something to do with Bailey Hongzhuang. What kind of magic treasure was this? It actually had such an astonishing effect. If he could take that magic treasure for himself, then his future life-saving means would increase. However, he did not notice that while he was thinking about all this, a black stone-like figure had disappeared into the dust with the Chaos Ring. She would rather die than let the Chaos Ring fall into the hands of Qing Devil. She knew very well that it was impossible for her and Beichun to take the opportunity to leave together in that situation. The Qing Devil's breath had been locked on them. If they wanted to leave together, they would definitely be caught by the Qing Devil. Now that she and Beichun had attracted Qing Devil's attention, no one would notice Xiao Bai's departure. I didn't expect you to have such a treasure. Qing Devil sneered, and the covetous look in her eyes was obvious. However, he was not in a hurry to obtain the treasures. After all, the two of them would die in his hands soon. By then, everything would naturally fall into his hands. Now die. Bang! With an earth-shattering sound, a dazzling light suddenly burst out from Qing Devil's body, emitting a terrifying aura. Then he dashed forward like a shooting star. Di Beichen looked at the gentle and affectionate woman in his arms and said softly, "Don't be afraid." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and kissed him on the lips. "I'll find you again in my next life." Okay. Di Beichun raised one hand, and all the energy in his body burst out at this moment. It turned into an overwhelming black storm, rippling between heaven and earth. In an instant, the people found that the original daytime was suddenly covered by thick ink-like darkness, and the daytime turned into the night in an instant. The tall and straight figure seemed to turn into the god of the moon, emitting a terrifying aura that could not be approached. What's this? When the boss saw this scene, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. He had never seen such a strange scene. Chapter 72-94. Second brother also looked in disbelief at the scene in front of him. The two of them were clearly at the end of their rope, but for some reason, his heart could not help but tremble as he looked at the overwhelming darkness. This feeling was as if this power was completely beyond their control. Did you see that? That man is actually of the dark attribute. Is this the strength of a dark cultivator? Such a terrifying aura is too shocking. Why do I feel like it's the end of the world? It's too scary. Shocked gazes gathered on the two figures that were hugging each other. This scene was too shocking, and it left an indelible mark in their hearts. The Malachian fiend felt a little uneasy when he noticed this. It was Di Beichen's final struggle, but why was his aura so terrifying that even he felt that he could not resist it? What a joke! Qing Devil shouted coldly, dispelling all the uneasiness in his heart. He did not believe that Di Beichun had any extraordinary means. Today, he would definitely die by his own hands. The golden light was getting closer and closer, and its sharp breath blew Bailey Hongzhuang's long hair away. She could almost feel the smell of death. Rumble. A monstrous sound suddenly spread out, and the deafening sound seemed to want to burst everyone's eardrums. Everyone subconsciously used essence energy to protect their ears, but they were unwilling to miss that exciting confrontation. An astonishing aura that they had never felt before suddenly appeared in the thick darkness. In an instant, everyone only felt that there was a terrifying aura that completely suppressed them and looked down on all life. It was a kind of contempt, as if they were all ants. Under this invisible but terrifying pressure, no one could even raise their heads. What is this? Fear appeared in everyone's eyes. It was as if they had seen a true king. All their resistance seemed to be a joke in front of him. How dare you attack my master? Are you tired of living? A cold voice came from the darkness, exuding a cold, indifferent, and disdainful chilliness. Everyone stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move an inch. They couldn't see the creature's form at all. All they could see was a splashing black color. Their mental strength was also blocked the moment they tried to extend it. However, they clearly heard the word master. Master? Who was the master of such a creature? Everyone curled up in a corner, trembling and cursing the madman in their minds. How dare he challenge the master of such a creature? Wasn't he courting death? Bei-chun was also surprised by the sudden appearance of the situation. He had only given the Azure Demon the final blow with the determination to die. However, what happened next was completely beyond his expectations. The thick black color gave him a vague sense of familiarity, but he had never performed such a move before. Even now, when he thought about it, he was not sure how he had performed it. When he heard that familiar, thunder voice, he was certain that it was his baby's voice. Baby, Master, I'm late. When everyone heard the conversation between Bei-chun and the terrifying creature, they all had a mental breakdown. Bow, bow. How could such a terrifying creature have such a name? Master must be very careless to call it that. Chapter 72-95. This is the baby. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened her eyes. She had always wanted to see Bei-chun's contracted beast, and the appearance of this fellow had undoubtedly shocked her greatly. What kind of strength was this? At the very least, in the face of such an aura, she did not even have the slightest thought of resisting. This was because this was an aura that completely suppressed their existence. When the darkness dissipated, everyone could see the situation clearly. In the distance, there was a bigger hole than the one Bei-chun fell into. Qing Devil fell into this hole. No one knew whether she was dead or alive. Everyone wanted to take a look at the contracted beast that could easily send an elementary immortal expert flying, but they were disappointed. They didn't see it at all. Master, baby can only stay for a short period of time after breaking through the barrier. I can't stay by Master's side. Master must protect yourself well. The baby's voice was filled with reluctance and worry, as well as an indescribable weakness. Bei-chun understood. Earlier, Baby had said that there was a powerful Bisema blocking him. That was why he couldn't come to Bei-chun's side. Come to think of it, the situation just now was because it sensed Bei-chun's danger, so tried its best to temporarily break through the barrier and come here. Lauda and Lao Air hurriedly ran into the pit. When they arrived, they found that Qing Devil had been covered by a layer of smoke and dust. No one knew whether she was dead or alive. The two of them didn't dare to waste any time. They carried Qing Devil on their backs and quickly fled. They practically didn't have the slightest ability to resist such a terrifying existence. If they continued to stay here, then they would undoubtedly die. Xiao Souo looked at the tall and handsome figure with a burning gaze. When she saw Bei-chun use that move, she felt as if she had seen the god of darkness. She had thought that Qing Devil could completely crush Bei-chun, and this was the right choice for her. However, when she saw Bei-chun's demeanor in the dark night and saw that he had such a powerful, contracted beast, she realized that it wasn't like that. Only this man was the most outstanding existence. She looked at Bei-chun holding Bailey Hongzhuang tenderly. The affection in his eyes was something she had never experienced from any other man. However, everything she wanted belonged to Bailey Hongzhuang. Jealousy almost devoured her completely. However, when Qing Devil was rescued, she had no choice but to quickly follow them. This was because she had no other choice but to rely on the Malakian demon now. Sudong, let's go. Xiao Seiwu didn't dare to delay for even half a second. Once Bailey Hongzhuang regained her senses, she would be finished. Xiao Sudong looked at Xiao Yu's eyes. I won't follow you to Qing Devil. Xiao Souwa looked puzzled. Qing Devil has a powerful force in the immortal realm. We can live a good life as long as we follow him. Xiao Sudong shook his head and handed the secret key to Xiao So. No, it's your life, not mine. After what happened today, he found that Xiao So was no longer the sister he had always admired. Perhaps she had completely changed since a long time ago. He couldn't accept her point of view. What she had done and leaving with her was not the life he wanted. Xiao So was a little anxious. She wanted to persuade Xiao Sudong, but the situation was urgent. She didn't have time to say anything else. She could only say, "It's up to you. You've become a fool following Master." Chapter 72-96. Looking at Xiao Sou's figure leaving quickly, Xiao Sudong felt as if he had been freed. His sister, whom he used to worship, was gone forever. She, who only wanted to rely on Qing Devil, might have forgotten about her family. What she had done all this time was just because she was unwilling to accept her fate. He wouldn't forget his family's revenge, but he didn't want to use the same method as Xiao Souwa. Even though he hated Di Beiqin and his men to the core, he suddenly understood many things when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions before her death. Why were they always able to trust each other and were willing to sacrifice their lives for each other? This kind of cohesiveness was what the Xiao clan had always lacked. Shi didn't say much. He knew that this young man already had his own plans. As his master, he didn't want to influence Xiao Sudong's decision, but he had to admit that such a decision made him feel very gratified. Bailey Hongzhuang actually noticed Xiao Seiwu's departure. She saw everything in her eyes, but on the surface, she pretended not to care. She knew very well that both she and Beichen were already at the end of their rope. With Bao Bao gone, they no longer had anything to rely on, so they could only pretend to be confident and stand there without the slightest hint of fear. Fortunately, the moment Bao Bao made a move, the shock was enough. Qing Devil's men didn't have the guts to test their current situation and left in the blink of an eye. After Qing Devil and the others left, Bailey Hongzhuang also left Di Beichen's arms. They didn't rest immediately, but kept moving forward slowly in this state. At this moment, the surrounding cultivators had completely regarded Di Beichen and Yi Shiwen as killing gods. If such powerhouses wanted to kill them, it would undoubtedly be as easy as squashing an ant. Everyone dispersed in succession for fear of angering these two great beings. Otherwise, they would be completely finished. After the crowd dispersed, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen collapsed to the ground. They didn't even have the strength to move. Just a little bit more, and they would have disappeared from this world. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen beside her. A bright smile suddenly appeared on her pale face. At least they were still alive. Di Beichen smiled knowingly. He held Bailey Hongzhuang's fingers tightly, unwilling to let go. At least they were still together. Xiaobai noticed the changes behind it after it had left for some distance. Unwilling to give up, it ran back. When it saw that Di Beichen and Xiaobai were still alive, it cried tears of joy. After Di Xiaofeng and the others returned to the Di family, they were quickly carried to their rooms to rest. The doctors rushed over to treat them. With such a serious injury, almost everyone in the Di clan was on tenterhooks. Lin Yinqing had already fainted when she heard the bad news. When she woke up, she couldn't help but secretly wipe her tears. She had been sentenced for so many years before Beichen came back. However, now that something like this had happened, it meant that Beichen and Hongzhuang would never come back. Those two children. Lin Yinqing looked at Di Yujue beside her. As soon as she opened her mouth, she was already sobbing. Di Yujue pulled Lin Yinqing into his arms. His usually stern and determined face couldn't hide the grief at this moment. Beichen had always been his pride, but he never thought that he would end up in such a situation. I didn't expect that Qing Devil was still alive. Xiao Souwu is simply despicable. Chapter 72-97. Xiao Wanrong could not suppress the anger in her heart. She really regretted her past actions. Fortunately, she thought that she was a good child a few years ago. She was really blind. Di Xiaofeng had already woken up and the doctor had already taken care of his injuries. Even so, even the slightest movement would still cause heart-wrenching pain. Xiaofeng, your injuries are very serious. Don't move for now, Di Lin Xian warned. Di Xiaofeng didn't insist. How are the others? Don't worry, the others are already being treated. Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng felt more at ease. This time, all of them were heavily injured. It wasn't until he fought with an expert in the elementary celestial stage that he realized how big the gap between their strength was. As soon as the other party made a move, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. The gap between the two was simply an insurmountable chasm. How terrifying was that? However, when he thought of Beichen and Hong Zhuang, his eyes turned red. His life was saved by the lives of his younger brother and sister-in-law. Xiao Sou has attached herself to Qing Devil. She won't let us go. We'd better take this opportunity to leave. Di Xiaofeng couldn't care less about his grief. The most important thing now was the safety of the whole family. He could almost imagine that it would not be long before Xiao Sou and the Azure Fiend appeared here. Even if they were restricted by the laws of heaven and earth, as long as they brought more people, the Di family would not be able to resist. Don't worry, I've already sent someone to deal with it. You just need to focus on recuperating, Di Yujius said. Ever since Di Xiaofeng told him about the situation before he fainted, he had already started to deal with it. The Di family had already become a target, and their gathering together was the biggest target. Only by dispersing them could the bloodline of the Di family be preserved. Not only that, he had already sent someone to inform the Lin family and the Bailey family. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. He understood that his father must have taken care of everything. I will definitely avenge Beichen and Hong Zhuang. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were bleeding. Until now, the tragic scene was still deeply imprinted in his mind. He couldn't forget it at all. During the time he was unconscious, this scene had never disappeared. He couldn't forget the last look in Hong Zhuang's eyes. When he thought that those two figures would become a memory forever, he felt unbearably heartbroken. Di Yujua looked at the pained Di Xiaofeng and patted him on the shoulder. We'll all avenge Beichen and Hong Zhuang. This isn't your fault. Don't shoulder everything. No. Di Xiaofeng shook his head, his eyes filled with unconcealable pain. I'm too useless. If he wasn't so useless, if he had also broken through to the elementary celestial stage, perhaps the situation wouldn't be so bad, and perhaps there would still be a chance to turn things around. He closed his eyes as tears flowed uncontrollably down his cheeks. If he could, he wished that he was the one who died. After Ling woke up, she stared blankly at the ceiling. Even though the doctor told her that the scars on her face would take some time to heal, she didn't care at all. Until Bai Yin Che's smile woke her up. Ling we're not dead. So what if we're not dead? Ling Er's face was ashen. Hong Zhuang was dead. What was the point of them living? Chapter 72-98. No. Bai Yin Che shook his head, unable to hide the excitement in his eyes. We're not dead. Ling was startled. Bai Yin Che's smile was so dazzling that it dazzled her for a moment. It wasn't until she thought about it carefully for a moment that she finally understood. That's right. We're still alive. A dazzling smile bloomed on Ling Er's lips. She didn't even care about the pain in her body. To her, this news was more useful than any elixir. They were Hong Zhuang's contracted beasts. If Hong Zhuang died, it meant that they couldn't live either. However, they were still alive, which at least meant that Hong Zhuang wasn't dead. Once Beichen died, Hong Zhuang couldn't possibly live alone. Therefore, they were almost certain that Beichen and Hong Zhuang were still alive. Although they didn't understand what happened after they left, and how Beichen and Hong Zhuang managed to survive in such a desperate situation, the fact that they were still alive was excellent news to them. Do you think that Xiao Sou captured them? Ling calmed down after a short moment of excitement. She had just experienced how perverted Xiao Sou was. If Hong Zhuang and the others had fallen into Xiao Sou's hands, it would be a fate worse than death. Bai Yin Che was most worried about this possibility. However, after thinking about it carefully, he said, Sister always has a lot of ideas. Even if they fell into Xiao Sou's hands, her situation wouldn't be too bad. If they had been humiliated, Bailey Hongzhuang would have already killed herself. Therefore, this situation was beneficial for them to think positively. I hope that's the case. A glimmer of hope bloomed in Ling Er's eyes. For the first time, she wanted to pray to God for the safety of Hongzhuang and Beichen. Bali Yin Che looked at Ling Er's serious expression, and a trace of gentleness flashed in his eyes. She had always been cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. She didn't talk much, but he knew that his sister was very important to Ling Er. It was just that she rarely showed it. He found someone to inform Di Yujue and the others of this news. Sure enough, after everyone heard the news, the Di family, who had been immersed in grief, suddenly bloomed with vitality. At least, this news brought them a glimmer of hope. Lin Yinqing covered her mouth. Compared to her previous despair, her eyes were now lit up. I hope that Hongzhuang and Beichen can live well. This news was undoubtedly good news for Shangguan, Yingying, and the others. At that moment, even the pain on their bodies seemed to lessen a little, crossing immortal domain. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had already fainted after Xiao He and Xiao Bai returned. Xiao He and Xiao Bai carried one person on their back and looked for a restaurant far away to stay. The nearby buildings had already been turned into ruins, so they could only walk very far away. Fortunately, the cultivators in this area had seen Di Beichen and Xiao He-er's strength. Even though the two of them had fainted, no one dared to do anything to them. Even the restaurant they stayed in did not dare to charge them, so no one dared to stay there. The innkeeper and the waiters were trembling with fear in front of Xiao He and Xiao Bai. They were afraid that they would make a mistake and anger the two of them. The doctors did their best and did not dare to be negligent. Xiao He and Xiao Bai found Bailey Hongzhuang's pills and fed them to the two of them. Chapter 72-99. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that she had a very long dream. In the dream, it was boundless darkness. There was only a black passage, but she couldn't see the end of it at all. My dear, a gentle and familiar voice sounded in front of her. The feeling of relief dispelled her nervousness and fear, and even a light source appeared in the darkness. She approached the light source step by step. Her eyelids trembled slightly, and she finally opened her eyes. She saw a pair of affectionate and gentle eyes. They were deep and charming, and the affection in them was so strong that it couldn't be dissolved. Looking at the familiar and handsome face and feeling the reassuring aura nearby, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Di Beichen, you're awake. Di Beichen was relieved to see that Bailey Hongzhuang had woken up. He had noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be having a nightmare. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and she looked like she was in pain. That was why he tried to wake her up. The moment he noticed the warm smile on her face, he felt completely relieved. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the unfamiliar surroundings and couldn't help but ask, "Where are we?" A restaurant in the crossing immortal domain. Di Beichen held a teacup in one hand and helped Bailey Hongzhuang sit up with the other. Xiao He and Xiao Bai brought us here. Qing Devil and the others won't come again, right? Bailey Hongzhuang asked worriedly. Now, Qing Devil was undoubtedly a big threat to them. Di Beichen shook his head slightly and let Bailey Hongzhuang lean in his arms. Then he said, "Don't worry, they won't come again for the time being." Although Bao Bao was only here for a moment, its attack was very powerful. Qing Devil was directly knocked unconscious. I think his injuries are more serious than ours, so he won't dare to cause trouble for us in the short term, unless he doesn't want to live anymore. Di Beichen looked confident. He didn't know how strong Bao Bao was before, but when he saw Bao Bao attack, he knew that Bao Bao's strength was beyond his expectations. That sort of strength was something that even Senior Zhong Li and the others couldn't compare to. He couldn't even figure out where such a powerful contracted beast came from. Fortunately, with such a deterrent, Qing Devil would not dare to disturb them. They knew that Bao Bao only appeared for a short moment because it tried its best. However, Qing Devil didn't know that at all. She only thought that they were protected by such a strong demon beast. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This time, it's all thanks to the baby that saved our lives. Otherwise, we would have been finished. Yes. D. Bachan's eyes darkened. When he thought about the move he had used in the end and how it was related to the baby, he felt that there were many things that couldn't be explained. All of this was like a riddle that he couldn't understand at all. However, he believed that all of this would be solved sooner or later, and he would definitely figure it out. Bailey Hongzhuang got up and ate something first. Then she carefully checked her injuries. Her injuries were very serious. However, after these days of recuperation, Xiao He and Xiao Bai fed her a lot of elixirs. Her injuries recovered a lot. They weren't serious. Then she checked D. Bachan's condition and found that his injuries were mostly healed. Although they still needed to recuperate for a while before they could fully recover, the current situation did not affect their daily lives. Let's go back first. Big Brother and the others may think that our current situation is very bad. After we go back, they will feel more at ease. Chapter 7300. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's considerate and caring look, D. Bachan's eyes softened. He nodded. All right. The chaos ring was once again returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. With a single thought, the two of them returned to the D family through the chaos ring. The moment the two of them appeared in the D family, everyone's face was filled with surprise. Young master, young mistress. Voices of surprise rang out one after another. Many people were so happy that they cried. D. Bachan had a completely different meaning to the entire D family. He was the leader of the D family. Even though the head of the family was D. Yujue, everyone knew that the goal of the younger generation was D. Bachan. Everyone was working hard to become an outstanding person like him. It was because of his appearance that the D family had its current status and future. The young master and young mistress are back. Quickly inform the master and madam. Quickly inform the master and madam. Bailey Hongzhuang and D. Bachan felt a warm feeling in their hearts when they sensed everyone's concern and fervent gazes. This was everything that they had tried their best to protect. These smiling faces were what they wanted to protect. Soon, D. Yujue and the others rushed over. When they saw that the two of them were safe and sound, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Over the past few days, even though they knew that Bachan and Gu Shizhou were still alive, they had no idea what the situation was like. Therefore, the huge rock in their hearts had never been lifted. It was only at this moment that they felt completely at ease. Bachan. Lin Yunqing stepped forward and hugged D. Bachan. Her face was filled with a relieved smile. You're both still alive. That's great. D. Bachan hugged Lin Yunqing with both hands. He felt that his mother had lost weight again. The little bit of weight that she had regained with great difficulty had disappeared along with the worry of the past few days. Mother, we'll be fine. D. Bachan's comforting voice sounded. He looked at Lin Yunqing seriously. I'm sorry for being unfilial and making you worry. Lin Yunqing's eyes were filled with tears as she shook her head repeatedly. No, you've always been my pride. I knew that my grandson wouldn't get into trouble so easily. D. Linxian laughed heartily as he patted D. Bachan's shoulder. You're indeed a good son of the D family. Although D. Linxian looked calm and boorish, if one observed carefully, they would notice that he did not use much strength when patting D. Bachan. It was as if he was afraid that he would affect Bachan's injuries if he used too much strength. Xiao Wanrong glanced at D. Linxian. She was too embarrassed to expose him in front of so many people. That day, when she heard that Bachan and Hongzhuang were in trouble, she didn't forget that this old man was also secretly wiping his tears. How are Big Brother and the others? D. Bachan asked with concern. You're all fine. Of course we're fine. At this moment, a joyful and young voice sounded from behind. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and noticed that Di Xiaofeng, Wen Ziren, and the others were all standing there, looking at them with smiles on their faces. Even with just a glance, she noticed that Di Xiaofeng and the others were still wrapped in gauze. Shangwan Yingying was still leaning on her crutches. It was obvious that she had spent a lot of effort to pick them up. You haven't recovered from your injuries yet. What are you doing out here? Bailey Hongzhuang asked worriedly. When her gaze fell on Shangwan Yingying's legs and Ling Er's face, an uncomfortable feeling filled her heart. At that time, She had seen Xiao Sou's actions clearly, but she didn't have the chance to stop it. Chapter 7301. Seeing the worried look on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, Shangwan Yingying's people all smiled. Of course, I'm here to pick you up. How can we recover as soon as possible without you? The great doctor, when Xiren's smile was the brightest, and the curve of his lips almost reached his ears. I know you are lucky. How can it be so easy? It's really a waste of my tears. Our Yingying cried until she couldn't breathe. You have to take a good look at her. Don't leave any sequelae. Xiren. Shangwan Yingying glared at Xiren. This guy liked to expose her shortcomings in front of everyone. Bailey Hongzhuang strode forward and walked to Shangwan Yingying's side. Yingying has always been very concerned about me. Shangwan Yingying's eyes were filled with tears. She could never forget Bailey Hongzhuang's last look. If they were not lucky this time, it might be the last time she saw Hongzhuang. Don't stand here. Let's go back to the house first. Lin Yunqing looked concerned. All of you have not recovered from your injuries. If you catch a cold, it will be even slower to recover. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen in front of her looked normal, but she knew in her heart that they must be seriously injured. They must have rushed back as soon as they recovered a little. They must need to rest for a while. Hearing this, everyone reacted and hurriedly called Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang into the house together. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to see everyone's condition after entering the house, but before she could do anything, Xiao Wanrong stopped her. Hongzhuang, you just came back. Your body has not recovered. How can you be busy with this? Xiao Wanrong glared at Di Beichen and said, You didn't stop her. Didn't I know that you would definitely stop me, grandmother? Di Beichen smiled faintly. Xiao Wanrong was also amused by Di Beichen's words. You're getting more and more talkative. Hongzhuang, the doctors of the Di family are highly skilled. You don't have to worry too much, Xiren said. Look at all of us. Aren't we all recovering well? Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept over everyone. Indeed, everyone seemed to be in good spirits. They must have recovered well. Beichen, hurry up and tell us. How'd you guys get out? Di Xiaofeng could no longer hold back his curiosity. He was naturally overjoyed that Beichen and Hongzhuang could return safely. However, he really couldn't understand how they managed to escape from such a desperate situation. Could it be that some helper had appeared after that? As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes focused on Di Beichen, full of curiosity. Di Beichen smiled faintly. In fact, even we didn't expect the final change. The one who saved us was the contract beast I met in the natural moat. Hearing this, Xiren and the others couldn't help but be stunned. When did you have another contract beast? They hadn't heard of this before. The most important thing was that Beichen already had Xiao Bai and Xiao Xuanzi. How did he have another contract beast in the blink of an eye? Previously, when I was in Heaven's Moat, I entered a cave and met a contract beast there. However, the contract beast was sealed in a barrier and couldn't appear by my side. I have always had doubts and even thought that the contract beast might have recognized the wrong person, so I didn't mention it. Chapter 7302. Di Beichen had always had doubts about Bao Bao. Bao Bao's appearance was too inexplicable. There was nothing related to Bao Bao in his memory. Even though Bao Bao had left a mark on his hand, the doubts in his heart had never disappeared. However, after experiencing this incident, he felt that Bao Bao might not have mistaken him for someone else. Even if he couldn't figure out the real reason, there might be some kind of connection between them. For example, the last move he used. After hearing all this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Beichen's encounters were really beyond their imagination. How difficult was it to find a suitable contract beast on a normal day? However, Beichen didn't need to look for one by himself. A contract beast had already come to his door. Is your contract beast very strong? Did it solve the crisis by itself? Bailey Yunyan asked curiously. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Beichen's contract beast is not just strong, it's ridiculously strong. It only used one move, and Qing Devil was beaten to a pulp. His subordinates took it away directly. They didn't dare to stay for even half a minute. Now that she thought about it, she still felt the terror of Bao Bao's strength. It was a kind of demonic beast that was completely superior to them. If she had to make an analogy, it would be like a person from the upper world bumping into a person from the immortal realm. Perhaps this was the most appropriate analogy. Hearing this, everyone showed a trace of shock on their faces. It's so strong. It's so strong. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Then with this demonic beast accompanying Beichun in the future, won't we be invincible? When Xiren said with an exaggerated expression, it's not as simple as you think. Deep Beichun glanced at Xiren. It hasn't broken the bounded domain yet. Because my situation was too critical, it used some special method to suddenly appear beside me. It only appeared for a few breaths of time before disappearing. He could feel Bao Bao's breath was disordered when it left. Obviously, Bao Bao was seriously injured in this attack. I see. When Xiren was suddenly enlightened, but he was not disappointed because of this. But no matter what, having such a demonic beast is an excellent trump card. That's great. I think Qing Devil won't make trouble for us for the time being after being taught a lesson. Di Xiaofeng let out a sigh of relief. In the past few days, not only were they worried about the safety of Beichun, but they were also worried about the future of the Di family. The news that Beichun brought back was undoubtedly excellent. It proved that they were safe for the time being. The Qing Devil wouldn't dare to cause trouble for the time being, so the Di family didn't need to evacuate their children. Everything could be kept as it was. Big brother, did you get the secret key? Di Beichun looked at Di Xiaofeng. The Qing Devil's appearance was too coincidental. If she hadn't appeared at that time, everything would have been resolved like the wedding. A trace of helplessness appeared on Di Xiaofeng's face. He handed a secret key to Di Beichun. The Qing Devil's appearance was really unexpected. I only got one of the keys at that time, and the other one is still in Xiao Sudong's hands. Is he with the Qing Devil now? Xiao Sudong is not with the Qing Devil. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice sounded. She clearly saw the situation at that time. Xiao Sudong and Xiao Sou parted ways. Chapter 7303. Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. It was great that Xiao Sudong was not with Xiao Sou. However, their joy was soon extinguished by Bailey Hongzhuang's next words. I saw Xiao Sudong give a secret key to Xiao Sou. Xiao Sou left with Qing Devil, and Xiao Sudong left with Shu Yu. That's interesting. Bali Yinshe raised his eyebrows. Xiao Sudong didn't go with Xiao Sou. He must have his own plans, Di Beichun said slowly. Xiao Sudong has changed a lot compared to before. After a series of sighs, everyone calmed down. At least, they were safe for the time being after this incident. Di Beichun and Qin Wanru were not in a hurry to leave. They stayed in the clan to heal their wounds. They would go back to the Duxian realm after they recovered. Xiao Sou left the Duxian realm with Qing Devil and others for the immortal realm. Qing Devil hasn't woken up yet. What should we do? Looking at Qing Devil, whose eyes were closed, Lao Si was full of worry. At that time, they found it difficult to move their faces when they felt the coercion of the contract beast, let alone Qing Devil, who had suffered a full blow. They had already found a doctor to treat the Azure Demon as soon as possible. They also fed him many precious pills without hesitation. After that strike, the doctor had already said that the Azure Fiend would have to rely on luck to survive. Fortunately, the Azure Demon's life was saved after they tried everything they could think of. However, he hadn't woken up yet. They couldn't help but worry about him. They didn't know how he was doing. That bastard is so powerful. We really underestimated them this time. Lao Si looked gloomy. The performance of Di Beichun and others had exceeded their expectations. They didn't expect that they would have such a backup plan. If it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. The appearance of that demonic beast is strange. Furthermore, such an existence seems to be completely beyond our understanding. Second brother had a puzzled look on his face. Even though the demonic beast had only appeared for a brief moment, he had clearly sensed the aura of a ferocious beast. They had been following Qing Devil in the immortal realm for a long time and had seen many experts. However, this was the first time they had seen such a terrifying aura. Indeed, Boss nodded. However, don't you think it's even more strange that a demonic beast of this level would recognize Di Beichun as its master? Chen was not as powerful as the Qing devil, but the evil beast almost killed the Qing devil with one move. It was so strange. Second brother and fourth brother looked at each other with a blank look on their faces. After a long while, old fourth said, "Let's not talk about that. Isn't there a lot of strange things about that kid? Who could have such powerful strength when he had just broken through?" Hearing this, Lao Si and second brother thought for a while and agreed. So, they didn't ask further. "Let's take Master back first and find a better doctor to treat him. I believe he will wake up." Xiao So also looked at Qing Devil worriedly. He was the only person she could rely on now. If something happened to Qing Devil, she would have nowhere to go. Xiao Sudong and Shu Yu left together. She didn't even know where they were now. "Do you know what's going on?" Lao Si looked at Xiao Sou and asked. Xiao Sou shook her head hurriedly. "I don't know." Chapter 7304. The night was dark, and the moonlight was hazy. Young Master Gong. Master has met with Qing Devil's men. A man in black stood in front of Gong Jun with a respectful look. "Did you make a move?" Gong Jun asked. "No." The man cupped his hands. "I've been following Master since he left." Initially, everything had been going smoothly. However, the Azure Fiend had suddenly appeared and ruined everything. "I listened to your orders and didn't make a move until the last moment. Then, when I was about to make a move, Black Flame appeared." "Oh." Gong Jun raised his eyebrows, but there wasn't the slightest bit of surprise between his brows. That guy hasn't come out of the enchantment for so long. Master is still reliable for once when he's in danger. The wizardry boundary guarding Black Flame has always been very strong. This time, Black Flame forced its way out and was injured. "It doesn't matter." Gong Jun waved his hand as if he didn't care about it at all. "It'll recover after a while. As long as Master is fine, it's fine." Looking at Gong Jun's indifferent face, the man couldn't help but mourn for Black Flame in his heart. Sure enough, in young Master Gong's eyes, other people or beasts were not important at all except for Master's safety. Gong Jun noticed that the man was still standing there and didn't leave. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Anything else?" "Young Master Gong, I heard that the fourth prince planned to look for the second prince after he couldn't find the master. The second prince disappeared with the master, so he should be appearing soon." The relationship between second prince and master was. Now, if second prince is roped in by fourth prince, I'm afraid master's situation will be very unfavorable. A trace of disdain appeared in Gong Jun's eyes. This guy really doesn't know when to stop. Back then, Master could easily wipe out everything. Does he think that Master can't be compared to him after reincarnating? Ridiculous. A ferocious and vicious aura erupted from Gong Jun's body. It was bloodthirsty and brutal. His insufferably arrogant aura caused the man in front of him to feel an increase in pressure. Everyone knew that young Master Gong, one of the Master's right-hand men, was always full of smiles, but those who knew him would know how scary young Master Gong was when he was truly angry. "Keep an eye on the fourth prince. Don't let him find the second prince." "Yes," the man replied. "What should we do if we discover the second prince?" Gong Jun thought for a moment and said, "Kill him." "Yes. Other than that, is there any movement from that woman?" Gong Jun asked. The man shook his head slightly. "I've already investigated the situation. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, the only other woman by Master's side is Xiao Sou." "Then what is Xiao Sou's attribute?" "Light element," the man replied. Hearing this, Gong Jun's eyes narrowed. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. "Kill her. Young Master Gong, if that woman is really... And if we do this, will it be?" Gong Jun muttered to himself for a moment, then said, "Master has already found the person he likes. Miss Bailey, who has the dark attribute, is the most suitable. Why do you have to worry about the past? Even if Master pursues the matter in the future, I will bear the responsibility." The man was startled. After noticing Gong Jun's resolute gaze, he nodded and said, "Yes, this subordinate will do it right away." Only when the man's figure disappeared into the black did Gong Jun quietly look at the crescent moon in the sky and fall into deep thought. "Master, if you really love Miss Bailey, then she should be able to feel your regrets." Chapter 7305. After more than 10 days of recuperation, Bailey Hongzhuang's injuries had completely healed. Not only her, but the others' injuries had also mostly recovered. As for Di Beichun, he recovered a bit earlier than her. Di Beichun had been discussing the future plans of the Di family with Di Yujua these days. In addition, he also guided some young children in their cultivation. His influence was undoubtedly greater than Di Xiaofeng's. Even if he only appeared in the martial arts field for a short period of time, all the children seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and their enthusiasm for martial arts was unprecedentedly high. Bailey Hongzhuang focused on nursing everyone's bodies, and in addition, she also guided Dr. Wu and a group of young doctors. Until everything was ready, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the Duxian domain. Because they had found Xiao So, Di Xiaofeng and the others didn't need to rush back. They simply stayed in the family to recuperate for a while. The two returned to the Duxian domain and went back to the Guichun Tower without stopping. "Boss, you're finally back. I've been looking forward to it every day." Gong Jun looked at Di Beichun with a face of surprise and then looked behind him. After finding that there was no one else, he couldn't help but show doubts in his eyes. "Where are the others?" "It's a long story." Di Beichun looked at Gong Jun. "Is everything okay here?" Gong Jun quickly nodded. "The business of the Guichun Tower is very good. It has been thriving, and the business is even more popular than before." Hearing this, Di Beichun was relieved. "That's good. We'll go back to the mine first, and then we'll talk to you in detail." After saying this, Di Beichun quickly walked in the direction of the mine. After leaving for more than half a month, they didn't know if there were any changes in the mine. Until the two arrived, Zhou Su and Lei Jun hurriedly greeted them. "Where have you been these days? You've been gone for so many days. We were worried that something might have happened to you." "We're fine," Di Beichun said. "What happened in the mine?" "Nothing major," Zhou Su replied. "Then it's a small matter?" Bailey Hongzhuang noticed a trace of worry between Zhou Su's eyebrows. Zhou Su's lips twitched. Sure enough, these two guys were really sensitive. "Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that you guys haven't been around for a while, so it's inevitable that everyone has some suspicions. Some people even thought that you might never come back, so it's inevitable that some of them, they don't take you seriously?" Di Beichun raised his eyebrows. He had already guessed what was going on. They had just convinced the consul and chased Du Bing and her away. After that, they had disappeared for so long. Many people would probably think that they had been killed by Du Bing and her. A little. Zhou Su was a little embarrassed. When Ji Chuan and Lin Feng left, they left everything to them to deal with. They didn't expect that in just half a month, such a problem would occur. They also felt a little apologetic. "It doesn't matter." Di Beichun looked indifferent. "Since we've come back, all these comments don't exist." Lei Ju nodded. "Naturally, Ji Chuan, they can't compare with your strength. In this mine, to put it bluntly, strength was respected. Without strength, it was very difficult for the other side to make any waves even if they wanted to." "Who on earth is it?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. "Well, it's the one over there, Zhang Sun, the manager of the number 35 mine." Lei Jun raised his eyebrows. Chapter 7306. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her eyes and looked in the direction indicated by Lei Jun. The other party was also looking at them. After noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, he could not help but lower his head and did not dare to look at them again. "When you were here, they didn't care at all?" Di Beichun asked. "This guy's strength is actually more outstanding than ours, but he didn't make too much of a fuss. He just tried to get some information from our mouths." Zhou Su said. Di Beichun nodded slightly. This situation was within their expectations. His seat was not secure, and he had not been around for a long time. It was inevitable that some people would want to take over. Now that they had returned, all of this was naturally not a difficult matter. Originally, he was only worried that this matter had already caused a ruckus before they had returned. While they were conversing, Zhang Sun actually walked over directly. Lei Jun and Lei Jun couldn't help but be slightly surprised when they saw this. They never expected that Zhang Sun would be even bolder than they'd imagined. Isn't he courting death by daring to look for trouble at a time like this? "Manager Ji, Manager Gu, you've returned." As Zhang Sun approached, A flattering smile appeared on his face, and there was a hint of nervousness in his expression. When the two of you weren't here earlier, I've always been very concerned about your whereabouts. I was worried that Du Bing and the other two would take the opportunity to harm the two of you. Now that I've seen the two of you return safely, I can be at ease. Zhang Sun's words were flawless, perfectly complementing what he had done previously. However, everyone present was a discerning person who wouldn't understand his true thoughts. Therefore, when Zhang Sun finished speaking, Di Beichen and the other three didn't say anything and just looked at him quietly. Gradually, cold sweat seeped out of Zhang Sun's forehead. Unable to withstand such pressure, his expression revealed a trace of panic. Plop! Under everyone's astonished gazes, Zhang Sun directly knelt down. Steward Ji, it's all my fault. Please be magnanimous. I won't dare to do it again. Zhou Su swallowed a mouthful of saliva and couldn't help but look at Di Beichen's expressionless face. This was the gap between them. When facing them earlier, Zhang Sun did not have the slightest hint of fear, and his tone was also very arrogant. Now that Ji Chuan was back, Zhang Sun was already scared to this extent before he could say anything. It was really embarrassing. Steward Ji, I swear that in the future, I will obey your every command and will never dare to offend you. Please spare my life. Zhang Sun regretted his actions. If he hadn't been so sure that Ji Chuan and Ji Yinshu wouldn't have come back, he wouldn't have dared to do such a thing. After all, who was Yuan Gang? It was simply not something he could compare to. Even Yuan Gang had died at Ji Chuan's hands. If Ji Chuan wanted to deal with him, wouldn't it be easy? However, right after Du Bing left, Ji Chuan went missing. Not only him, but almost everyone believed that something had happened to them. He had only taken the initiative to stand out. Now, this was what he regretted the most. The surrounding stewards naturally knew about the commotion caused by Zhang Sun. When they saw this scene, they all rushed over and looked at the scene curiously. Zhang Sun was quite proud of himself a few days ago, but now he's done for. Isn't that so? Ji Chuan and Ji Yinshu only left for half a month, and he jumped out in such a hurry. Isn't he in trouble now? However, his attitude of admitting his mistake is quite sincere. Chapter 7307. Everyone's eyes fell on Di Beichen. They also want to know how Ji Chuan would deal with this matter. Earlier, when dealing with Yuan Gang, Ji Chuan had acted swiftly and decisively. Do you think Ji Chuan will kill him? I don't think so. Although Zhang Sun went a little overboard, he didn't do anything too outrageous. In the past, when Yuan Gang was here, he didn't kill people for no reason. Although many people had died in Yuan Gang's hands, he would always come up with a solution. For example, if they couldn't pass the assessment, at least they had a choice. Even if they couldn't stay any longer, they could at least choose to leave. It was much better than throwing their lives away. Di Beichen looked at Zhang Sun's trembling appearance and said slowly, "Get up." Zhang Sun was a little surprised, but he did not dare to raise his head, afraid that he had heard wrongly. Since Steward Zhang is so worried about our safety, shouldn't we thank you for your concern? Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly, his tone light. Why aren't you getting up? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Yes. Zhang Sun did not dare to continue kneeling. He quickly stood up and looked at Di Beichen cautiously. His life was now in the hands of the other party. I don't want something like this to happen again. Di Beichen looked at Zhang Sun. His voice was calm, but it was filled with warning. Zhang Sun nodded repeatedly. Of course. Steward Ji, don't worry. Nothing like this will ever happen again. I promise. Looking at the man's frightened appearance, Di Beichen waved his hand. Go back. Zhang Sun couldn't help but look at Di Beichen in surprise. He had thought that after this matter, even if he didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. He hadn't expected that Ji Chuan would let him off so easily. However, he also deeply understood that Ji Chuan and Mo Wuji were definitely not to be trifled with. Just the pressure from before had caused him to feel apprehensive. Such strength was completely not something he could contend against. Zhang Sun left as if he had been granted amnesty, not daring to stay for even half a second. After returning to the tent, Zhou Su sighed and said, You guys are really amazing. You don't have to do anything. Just stand there and the matter has already been resolved. Subduing the enemy without fighting. This is probably the case. Lei Jun sighed with emotion. This is your account book. Everyday situation has been recorded. Zhou Su handed over the account book. You don't have to worry about the amount of spirit-devouring stones handed in every month. Although the mining rate is not high, there's still some. Moreover, the mining rate in mine number 13 is already enough. Why don't you tell me where you've been these days? Di Beichun raised his eyes and glanced at Zhou Su. You're getting more and more involved now. Zhou Su could not help but shiver. He did not know why, but he felt that after Ji Chuan returned, his gaze seemed to be sharper than before, making him somewhat flustered. Forget it, forget it. I won't ask you. Anyway, nothing happened during this time. Everything here is in order. Thank you for your help during this time. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Let's go to Guichan Tower later. How about it? Zhou Su, who originally had a little complaint, suddenly brightened after hearing this. He quickly nodded and said, Haha, I know you're the most loyal. When are we leaving? Chapter 7308. If he hadn't followed Beichun to the mystic realm, he would probably still be in the radiant sun realm. He had thought more than once that if Bai Qingli had gone with them, she would have been an elementary immortal expert by now. Yang Lingfeng turned to look at Yang Han. He hadn't discussed this matter with him yet. Father, before Yang Lingfeng could say anything, Yang Han smiled and said, I understand. Once you reach the elementary immortal stage, you must go to the immortal region to explore. You've been staying in the family all this time, waiting for Beichun and the others to come back. Since they're going, you should go. Yang Lingfeng nodded. Various emotions flashed through his eyes, but he didn't say anything in the end. Although he had been in many places in the past few years, going to the immortal region had a special meaning. Once he went, he didn't know when he would be able to return. He wasn't even sure if he could return. However, as a cultivator, pursuing the martial Tao was everyone's idea. He couldn't stop. Seeing this, Bai Qingli's eyes revealed a trace of regret. It's a pity that I haven't broken through yet. He had already sensed the barrier to breaking through, but it would take some time to completely break through. This time, he obviously wouldn't be able to make it in time. Moreover, even if he did make it in time, he couldn't leave Yang Qinxue here. There's no rush. Yang Lingfeng grinned, revealing his white teeth, exuding a roguish charm. When you and my sister break through, perhaps I'll have already found a place to settle down in the celestial realm. At that time, it will be more appropriate for you two to come over. Bai Qingli put a hand on Yang Lingfeng's shoulder. All right, I believe that after you go to the immortal domain, everything will be smooth sailing. Perhaps the next time we meet, your cultivation will already be something I can only look up to. I'll do my best. When Yang Han saw this scene, he revealed a gratified look on his face. Young Master D, Lingfeng has a straightforward personality. Most of the time, he doesn't have any scruples when speaking. I'm afraid there's something wrong with him. Please take care of him. Yang Lingfeng said helplessly when he saw that his father didn't mention anything else but his shortcomings. Father, Ling Feng is quite powerful and will be of great help to us. Di Beichun smiled faintly. Yang Lingfeng gave Di Beichun a look. Sure enough, they were brothers. Look at how nice those words were. How could Yang Han not know what his son was thinking? He glared at him and said, With you guys here, I can rest assured. Actually, I also have some understanding of the immortal realms. If you guys don't know enough, I can tell you guys what I know, Yang Han said slowly. Hearing this, the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others all lit up. What they lacked the most right now was information about the celestial realm. The fact that Yang Han was willing to explain the situation to them made them extremely happy. Then I'll have to trouble City Lord Yang. Actually, what I know is also very ordinary information. I'm not afraid of being laughed at. All these years, because I've always wanted to enter the immortal region, but due to my lack of strength, I can only understand this information to satisfy my desire. No one had the slightest intention of laughing. Almost every cultivator in the chaotic immortal realm had the goal of entering the immortal region. Many people had the same obsession as Yang Han, but he deliberately asked about this information. It was clear that he was really looking forward to it. The immortal region has 13 continents, which are divided into 13 regions. In fact, each region is extremely large. Chapter 7309. I think that when it wakes up, its strength should have increased again, Bailey Yunyan said expectantly. However, she then revealed a worried look. Bachan already has a very powerful contract beast. Do you think it will affect him? When the nine-tailed Inferno Fox became D. Bachan's contract beast, it had requested that D. Bachan go to the immortal domain to find another demonic beast. The nine-tailed Inferno Fox said that the demonic beast's strength was stronger than it. Everyone was looking forward to it. However, no one would have thought that another demonic beast would suddenly appear at this time. If that demonic beast hadn't appeared, then they wouldn't have been able to keep their lives. I've thought about that as well. Emperor Xiaofeng revealed a helpless expression. Let's wait until the nine-tailed Inferno Fox wakes up. Bachan's contract beast is terrifyingly strong, which is a good thing. Moreover, I see that Bachan has a lot of contracted beasts now. He is the same as Hongzhuang. There is no limit to the number of contracted beasts. Maybe he will have another helper when the time comes. Hearing this, Bailey Yunyan nodded slightly. If that's the case, that would be great. Di Bachan and Zhang Sun stayed in the mine for a few days. After the incident with Zhang Sun, everyone had confirmed that Di Bachan was the boss of the mine. No one dared to do anything rash. Not only that, Di Bachan directly told everyone that he would leave the mine from time to time, and during his absence, things would be handed over to Zhou Su and Zhou Su to handle. If such a problem occurred when he returned, he would definitely not be polite. Everyone nodded in agreement, and no one dared to voice any objections. At the same time, Di Bachan also proposed another thing. If some mines were too inefficient, he could allocate some spirit-devouring stones for mine number 65 to help the supervisor pass the assessment. This news was like music to everyone's ears. No one had expected Di Bachan to make such a decision, but it was a great help to them. Usually, everyone would be able to pass the assessment, but this kind of thing couldn't be guaranteed. Sometimes, this kind of problem might occur. Every time this kind of problem arose, the days would become very difficult to pass. But now that Di Bachan had brought it up, it had undoubtedly helped everyone solve one of their worries. Immediately, everyone respected Di Bachan even more. Di Bachan was different from Yuan Gang. Yuan Gang only knew how to exploit, but Di Bachan was different. Lei Jun saw that everyone's attitude towards Di Bachan had become very cordial, and a trace of admiration rose in his heart. This guy was really too amazing. With just one move, he had already won over people's hearts perfectly. It seemed like he had paid some spirit-devouring stones, but when he thought about it carefully, this kind of submission came from the bottom of his heart. It had simply solved too many future problems. The most important thing was that the two of them had obviously found a better way, and these spirit-devouring stones were nothing in their eyes. Moreover, now that they had left again, no one would be dissatisfied, and no one would even report this matter. Ji Chuan, I find that you are getting smarter and smarter these days. Even I can't help admiring you. Zhou Su said with a smile. That's because you didn't notice it before. Di Bachan smiled faintly. We are going out for a while again. Zhou Su was slightly startled, and his face suddenly fell. Going out again? We shouldn't be away for so long this time. We should be back in less than half a month. Di Bachan said. Chapter 73:10. You don't have to worry about him. This guy is troublesome. Lei Jun glanced at Zhou Su and said, Now the mine is no longer the same as before. Everyone is sincerely convinced by you, so there shouldn't be any more trouble. You can rest assured. Seeing this, Zhou Su nodded. Yes, you can rest assured. After the two of them explained the matter properly, they embarked on the journey to find Qian Yangyi. The situation in the mine may be more complicated for others to solve, but as long as you don't care about the benefits here, it is undoubtedly the easiest to solve. The reason why Yuan Gang had always been complained about was that he had been oppressing others, and they didn't need it, so there was much less trouble. When they came to Qian Yangyi's residence again, he was obviously not surprised by their arrival. Your performance last time was really unexpected. Qian Yangyi looked at the two of them in front of him with a faint smile on his face. You know, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows, but she was not too surprised. With Qian Yangyi's information, the news should have reached his ears soon. Qian Yangyi nodded slightly, and his eyes fell on Di Beichun. It seems that I have to take back what I said last time. Qian Yangyi just said this, but did not explain which sentence he was referring to. Bailey Hongzhuang thought carefully, and suddenly remembered that Qian Yangyi once said that Di Beichun's strength might not be able to threaten him. Perhaps after the last incident, Qian Yangyi found that the situation was not so. Let's get straight to the point. What do you want to ask me today? Qian Yangyi spread out his hands. Do you want to know where that woman is now? No. Di Beichun's eyes were deep. I want to ask you about a secret. Secret? Qian Yangyi raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? The reason why the Duxian domain is sealed. Qian Yangyi's expression changed slightly. Why do you want to ask about this? I don't seem a need to answer this. How much? Just say it. Bailey Hongzhuang said. However, Qian Yangyi didn't mention the money directly. Instead, he looked at the two of them for a while before saying, I can't answer this question. Why? Qian Yangyi fell silent for a moment before he said, Don't tell me that all of you intend to change the current situation in the celestial region? Even if the two of you might be from the immortal realms, the matters here are decided by many people. With just the two of you, it's basically impossible to change everything. Since you've done business with me, this is my advice to you. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang understood a little. Qian Yangyi definitely knew everything. The reason why the crossing celestial domain had become like this should be the joint decision of many forces. In their current situation, it was no different from striking a rock with an egg. I didn't expect you to be so concerned about us. Di Beichun looked at Qian Yangyi and said slowly, I'm a righteous person. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. Qian Yangyi's expression suddenly became very stiff. Miss Bailey, what do you mean by suddenly laughing? Nothing, I just suddenly felt like laughing. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand, trying to cover up everything, but it was obviously useless. To be honest, we don't want to change all of this. Chapter 73:11. After Di Beichun understood what Qian Yangyi meant, he knew that it would be very difficult to change the situation in the crossing immortal domain. However, if he wanted to achieve what he wanted, there were other ways. Let me put it another way. I want to know how I can prevent my family members from suffering from mining after they ascend. After hearing this, Qian Yangyi understood. I see. He fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. According to their judgment, Qian Yangyi should know about this relative method. Could it be that they couldn't tell him? While the two of them were hesitating, Qian Yangyi suddenly raised his finger. Fixed price, 600 high-grade blood spirit stones. Although they had already guessed that with this guy's black-hearted nature, he would definitely ask for an exorbitant price. But the fact that he asked for 600 high-grade blood spirit stones made the two of them feel that this guy was simply robbing them of their money. High-grade blood spirit stones were very popular in the crossing immortal domain. With the income of an ordinary person, it would take many years of hard work to obtain so many blood spirit stones. However, this guy said it as if it was an ordinary thing. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of Gong Jun. If this guy was here, he would have directly confronted Qian Yangyi. Qian Yangyi obviously didn't expect that there would be an awkward silence after he said those words. He just quietly looked at Di Beichun and Li Du, but he wasn't too anxious. You're so black-hearted. Do you really have any business? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Qian Yangyi couldn't help but spit out the mouthful of tea that he had just drunk. Cough, cough, cough. These words. Is it really okay to be so blunt? Bailey Hongzhuang said calmly, I'm really curious. If you don't open for business for 10 years, you can eat for 10 years once you open for business. That's probably the case, Di Beichun said slowly. Qian Yangyi wanted to pretend, but Di Beichun saw right through him. Most importantly, he felt as if he had been seen through by Di Beichun. In fact, he had always killed as many as he could. Previously, when we asked you to help us gather information, it naturally took some effort. But this time, the matter is not so complicated. I think you already know this kind of thing in your heart, so you don't need to bother to gather information at all. The price is twice as high as before. Isn't it a bit too high? Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Qian Yangyi. She felt that even if it was for the sake of Gong Jun, she could not allow herself to be slaughtered without any struggle. Previously, I was only helping you find a person. Now, this concerns the future of your family. Is this price still not enough? You can sell this information again and again. Who knows how many people you've sold it to before? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. How can you charge such a high price for this kind of information that isn't firsthand? Aren't you being too dishonest in doing business? I'm being dishonest? Qian Yangyi looked anxious. I've always been fair in doing business. Even if it's black-hearted, it's because the other party is willing to do it. We won't bargain with you. It's a fixed price. Before Bailey Hongzhuang could finish, Di Beichen's voice had already sounded. 100. 100? Qian Yangyi's voice pierced through the sky. He stood up immediately. Is this how you bargain? You can leave. I'm not doing business with you anymore. Chapter 73:12. Qian Yangyi's face fell. Clearly, he was no longer willing to talk to the two of them. Di Beichen also stood up. His handsome and devilish face was expressionless. His star-like eyes narrowed slightly, vaguely emitting a dangerous aura. I remember, you said that you were weaker than me. In a split second, Qian Yangyi seemed to have been struck by lightning as he looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. Are you threatening me? Looks like you don't even want to save 100 high-grade spirit stones. Qian Yangyi couldn't help but recall the news he had heard before. Then he waved his hand. No, 100 it is. I promise you. He tidied up his clothes and sat down again. A faint smile returned to his face, as if nothing had happened. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in amazement. She didn't expect Beichen to be so much better at bargaining than her. In just a short while, he had saved 500 blood spirit stones. How excited would Gong Jun be if he knew about this? You can speak now, Di Beichen said. Qian Yangyi looked at the impeccable godlike man in front of him with a face full of unwillingness. He felt that he shouldn't have said such a thing before. Now, all the authority was in Di Beichen's hands. What you want is for your clansmen to not be caught to mine after they ascend to the crossing immortal domain, and to have a proper identity here, right? Not bad. Actually, this is not a very difficult thing. With your strength, you should be able to do it very quickly. You mean? Aren't you in a mine now? All the cultivators who had ascended were basically captured and sent to work in the mines. As the managers of the mine, it's easy for you to solve this kind of problem. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. As far as I know, the steward doesn't have such an ability. She had already been to the place where the cultivators ascended, and all the cultivators who appeared there would be evenly distributed to each mine. As stewards, they only had a quota for their own mines at most. Other than that, they could not transfer people away at all. I can't be a manager, but I can be a consul. Qian Yangyi spread out his hands. I think it shouldn't be difficult for you. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two also understood. It turned out that they were the stewards of the mine from the very beginning. This was actually a great help to them. As long as I become a consul, I can protect my people. Your people can avoid being caught and sent to mine. However, if you want to live a good life in the crossing immortal domain, it will depend on your own abilities. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang understood. She didn't expect things to be so simple. In the past, they thought that only by solving the situation in the crossing immortal domain would their clansmen be able to safely pass through the upper realm. They didn't expect that the solution to this problem would become much simpler. Although there would still be some hidden dangers in this way, it was undoubtedly the best way for now. Thank you, we're leaving. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up and placed 10 pieces of high-grade blood spirit stones on the table. Qian Yangyi looked at the blood spirit stones on the table, and his face was filled with confusion. Wait, what do you mean by this? This problem is so simple. Aren't you embarrassed to charge so much? Bailey Hongzhuang rolled her eyes. This guy didn't actually say anything important. If they had known this earlier, perhaps they would have talked to the consul earlier. Chapter 73:13. It was already very generous of him to give 10 high-grade blood spirit stones. F***CK. Qian Yangyi was just about to argue about this issue when he noticed Di Beichen's cold gaze. He could only swallow all the words back into his stomach and didn't dare to say anything else. This guy was definitely a wife-doting maniac. After leaving the courtyard, Bailey Hongzhuang was in a very good mood. She didn't expect Qian Yangyi to be so easy to bully. At the end of the day, it was all because of Bao Bao. I hope the baby can pass through the enchantment as soon as possible. Then we can be unscrupulous in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. I'm afraid it won't be easy for it to pass through the barrier, but it's only a matter of time. Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Feeling the familiar warmth, his heart calmed down. During this period of time, many things had happened that he could not explain. For example, what happened in the land of heritage and the appearance of the baby. He did not know what all of this meant. On one hand, this seemed to indicate his strength and the possibility of him becoming even stronger. On the other hand, a faint worry rose in his heart. To him, strength was something that could be achieved through hard work. However, this feeling of unease made him feel very uncomfortable. Therefore, he wanted to protect everything he wanted to protect, and the woman beside him was his most important treasure. Beichun, what's wrong with you? Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Di Beichun's hand had unconsciously tightened. She couldn't help but turn her head to look at him with a trace of doubt in her eyes. Did I hurt you? Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and found that it was a little red. He couldn't help but feel distressed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shook her head. I'm fine. It's just that I feel like you have something on your mind. Nothing. Di Beichun shook his head slightly. If there's anything, just tell me. Bailey Hongzhuang stopped in her tracks. Her clear eyes stared seriously at that handsome face. We promised that there would be no secrets. Di Beichun's eyes, which were as deep as the sea, seemed to ripple. However, when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, he calmed down. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. He moved closer and planted a kiss on the woman's fair forehead. There have never been any secrets between us. With that in mind, Di Beichun decided to tell Bailey Hongzhuang about his doubts about the baby. There should never be any secrets between them. He did not know what would happen in the future, but he felt that it would be good for Hongzhuang to understand everything that had happened. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. Actually, I've always been confused about these things. Back then, when I was comprehending the tablets, I once felt a very familiar tablet. However, I don't know why, but someone pushed it into another tablet. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes darkened. She had always kept this matter in mind. She felt that that person's words contained too much meaning. She told me that I shouldn't think about the things that I chose to forget back then. I don't know what she meant by that either. However, if she didn't find the wrong person, then it means that I've forgotten some things. However, I've never lost my memory. Hearing this, Di Beichun's eyes changed slightly. He always thought that he was the only one who had such a situation. He never thought that Hongzhuang had encountered a similar situation. Chapter 73:14. If he was the only one who encountered this situation, it might be a coincidence. But if both of them encountered this situation, then it was really a bit confusing. So, I'm not the only one who encountered this situation. Then why is that? Bailey Hongzhuang was confused. My situation can be explained. Maybe I encountered some illusion in the tablet, but your situation is really strange. So far, she had only encountered such a situation once. Although it left a deep impression in her heart, but thinking about it carefully, it might not be true. However, such things happen to Beichun one after another. There might be some connection between all these things, but they obviously couldn't figure it out yet. Maybe I really did forget something. Di Beichun looked a bit confused. When Bao Bao appears, I can have a good talk with him about this problem. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's true. When that time comes, we will have an answer. Everything now was just their imagination. If they really wanted to understand everything, they just had to talk to Bao Bao in detail and they would know the truth. Fortunately, they didn't have to rely on themselves to figure it out. Someone could answer this question. Di Beichun's depressed mood brightened up. No matter what, it's good that you're by my side. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips bloomed into a sunny smile. Of course. The two returned to the returning Chun Tower. Di Xiaofeng and the others also came back. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that the matter wasn't that complicated. It's easy to say that you want to become a consul, but it shouldn't be easy to do it, right? Shangguan Ing frowned. There should be conditions for this promotion. I think this kind of thing is just a matter of time for Beichin and the others. As long as they want to speed up, they should have a way. Xiren looked casual. He wasn't worried about this problem at all. We're not very clear now, but it shouldn't be difficult to get this information in the mind. Di Beichin's face was as calm as the wind. He believed that every steward of the mine was looking forward to the position of consul. Everyone must be working hard for this position. They didn't even need to ask the other consuls. They only needed to ask Zhou, Su, and Wang Yao to find out. Then I'll leave the rest to you. Di Xiaofeng patted Di Beichin's shoulder. I'll tell father this good news when I go back. He's been wanting to come to Crossing Immortal Domain for a long time. Di Beichin smiled faintly. I won't disappoint you. Gong Jun couldn't help but ask, how much did that guy kill? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Gong Jun and realized that he was staring nervously at Di Beichin. His hands were clenched unconsciously, and he looked like he would jump up and down if he heard a number that exceeded his expectations. 600. What? Gong Jun's eyes immediately turned red. 600 for such information? Why doesn't that guy go out and rob? Ling, and the others were dumbfounded. This price was indeed too much. Even if they didn't pay for it, they still felt pain when they heard it. He's simply a beast. Beichin bargained. Bailey Hongzhuang saw how excited Gong Jun was and couldn't help but add. Chapter 73:15. Hearing this, Gong Jun's expression eased a little. How much did you return? 100. 500 for this kind of information? Why doesn't he just rob someone? Gong Jun was still depressed. Although this price was slightly lower, 500 high-grade blood spiritual stones was still not a price he could accept. It's not 500, it's 100. He even bargained up to 100. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes rippled with a faint smile as she looked at Gong Jun's excited appearance with ridicule. This guy's character of treating money as his life was really interesting. Gong Jun and the others couldn't help but gasp for breath. The difference between 100 and 500 was huge. Beichin, I haven't seen you for a while, but your bargaining skills have improved quite a bit. When Xiren looked at Di Beichin in amazement. Previously, he had not realized that this guy actually had such an ability. I have to support my family. When Xiren's expression stiffened. What this guy meant by support the family, did it include him? Seeing that when Xiren, who had always been talkative, was silenced by Di Beichin's words, Shangguan Ingying couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then you have to support your family. 100 blood spirit stones isn't a small amount. That's why Hong Zhuang only gave me 10 blood spirit stones, Di Beichin replied. Women are better at keeping accounts. Why do I feel like I'm your son? Xiren couldn't help but ask. Pooh! Bali Yanche spat out a mouthful of tea. Xiren, do you have to be so dramatic? Can't you just let me have a sip of tea? I'm telling the truth. Xiren spread his hands. Don't you think so? Bali Yin Che's expression froze. I was originally Big Sister's contracted beast. F*CK. Aren't you a little too cunning? Xiren was dumbfounded. He simply couldn't refute this answer. For this kind of information, I think we should just give him $10. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Gong Jun. Not bad, right? Sister-in-law, you're truly brilliant. Gong Jun gave her a thumbs up. 10 blood spirit stones is already giving him a lot of face. In a world of darkness, winding black rocks covered the ground. Large swathes of red spider lilies bloomed in all directions, emitting a bewitching beauty. A man and a woman stood facing each other. The woman was wearing a long black dress, revealing her exquisite collarbone. Her fair and smooth neck was like a shining jade, and one could faintly see her towering breasts. Even though it was just a little ravine, it exuded a fatal charm. Her unparalleled appearance was not tainted with purity. It carried a unique charm, and her dark red lips were extremely seductive. At a glance, anyone could not help but admit that she was a stunner. However, at this moment, the woman's expression was not pleasant. Her fan-like eyelashes fluttered slightly, and her deep eyes were as dark and dangerous as the night sky. Fourth brother, I heard that you've been sending people everywhere to gather information recently. You should know that there are some things that you can't meddle with. Big sister, I don't understand what you're saying. The man chuckled and shook his head. His calm and collected appearance made it seem as if he could not feel the woman's intimidating pressure, and he easily dispelled it with little effort. His appearance was just as handsome as before, but it was less seductive and more feminine. His every move was filled with a natural elegance. His fair skin was hidden under his black robe, and his collar was turned up, revealing a trace of red. Contrasting with his extraordinarily handsome face, he was as beautiful as a fairy. Chapter 73:16. The woman coldly looked at the calm and collected Lien, her eyes revealing a trace of ridicule. It's fine if you put on an act in front of outsiders with such an image, but your poor acting skills can be seen through at a glance. The cold and indifferent voice emitted disdain from the bottom of his heart. A crack seemed to have appeared on the man's impeccable face, and a dim light flashed through his bright eyes. I advise you to stop what you're doing right now. I can overlook your little tricks, but if you don't stop and even try to stop him from coming back, I'll let you know the meaning of the word regret. The woman snorted coldly and left after saying that. Only then did the man raise his eyes and look at the woman's swaying back view. His hands under his sleeves gradually clenched into fists as killing intent boiled in his eyes. However, all of this happened in the blink of an eye. When he raised his head again, the man's flawless smile had once again appeared on his face. Your Highness, what should we do now? I'm afraid the first princess already knows what we're doing. Does she really think that without that guy around, all the power here will be under her control? The man's smile was bloodthirsty and mocking. We can't let that guy come back. Even if he does, it will be his corpse. Yes. After Di Baichun and Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the mine, Zhou Su and Zhou Su breathed a sigh of relief. You guys are really fast this time. You didn't let us down. Zhou Su laughed. Shall we go out for a drink tonight? All right. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and smiled. She knew that as long as this fellow had a chance to leave, he would definitely not reject it. After 3 rounds of wine, Zhou Su was already a little drunk. Although the Lei army was slightly better, it was not much better. You want to become a consul? Lei Jun asked. Isn't that nonsense? Zhou Su put down his wine glass. As stewards, who doesn't aim to become a consul? However, in order to become a consul, there must be a vacancy for a consul first. When the time comes, a new consul will be selected based on past achievements and strength. Ji Chuan, don't worry. With your strength, it's only a matter of time before you become a consul. Think about it. You're the boss in our mine now. If there's a chance, everyone will recommend you. Besides, the others can't beat you. How long does it usually take for an opportunity to appear? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Zhou Su shook his head. I don't know. You can ask the consul. Anyway, you're quite familiar with the consul. I think the speed of the change should be quite fast, and I heard that our consul will be promoted soon. When the time comes, the position of consul will be empty. With your relationship with the consul, he will definitely promote you. Lei Jun raised his glass. Ji Chuan, I'd like to propose a toast to you. When you become a consul, you must take good care of us. Clang. Zhou Su had not even raised his cup when he was already drunk. Lei Jun insisted on drinking this cup of wine, and then he lost consciousness. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. These 2 guys were really easy to deceive. At this moment, they said everything. It's not far from the consul's next inspection. Let's just wait. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Di Baichun nodded. Okay. Chapter 73:17. In the following period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had a rather leisurely time. Gong Jun used the money they saved to buy a sizable courtyard in the city, which would be the future base of the Di family. Look, these blood spirit stones were well spent. It's much better than being cheated by that black-hearted bastard. Looking at such a large mansion, Gong Jun felt refreshed. Di Xiaofeng and the others had already picked a room to stay in. With the number of people we have now, we don't need such a big mansion. So what? Gong Jun said in a rich and overbearing manner. Chun Returning Tower's reputation here is not small. We have to find a more imposing place to stay, so that we can live up to our status. Is that really the case? Bai Lian Che asked doubtfully. This fellow was essentially a miser. Previously, Gong Jun had used returning Imperial Tower to earn a lot of money, but he had never heard him mention the idea of changing locations. Isn't boss's father coming soon? We need to find a better place to stay. Gong Jun chuckled. Realization dawned on everyone. I knew it wasn't for us. Gong Jun, you are so good to Beichin. Will your future wife be jealous? Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but tease. If that's the case, why would I want this daughter-in-law? Shangwan Yingying, everyone, Gong Jun shrugged. Is there a problem? No. On such a leisurely day, Deep Beichin and Huang Tinga finally welcomed Huang Tinga. After I went back the last time, I really can't forget the fruits of the Imperial Returning Tower. Huang Tingui's face was full of smiles. I recommended it to the other consuls, but they always felt that I was lying, so I planned to bring a few more fruits back for them to try. No problem. Di Beichan looked normal. As long as you're happy, consul. Huang Tingui's eyes flashed with pleasant surprise. He looked at Di Beichan and said, I think highly of you. Thank you, consul. Di Beichan smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Huang Tiangui, that sly old fox, and felt a little annoyed in her heart. This guy was obviously saying all kinds of probing words to take advantage of her. After arriving at returning Qin restaurant, he first ordered all the signature dishes here. He had even eaten 2 of the fruits. Now, he was still thinking of taking a few more fruits with him. It was one thing for him to be greedy, but he had to put on an expression as if he was giving her face, which made her feel like he was an eyesore. We just happened to have a vacancy for a consul recently. I was thinking about who I could recommend. Huang Tiangui raised his eyebrows and stopped talking. Hearing this, how could Di Beichan not understand his meaning? He immediately waved his hand and said, 3 more servings of fruits. What do you plan to do, consul? Huang Tiangui's expression became even more proud when he heard this, and the corners of his lips gradually curled up. I plan to choose a capable person from our mine to be the next consul. What do you recommend? Consul is so wise. You must already have a plan in mind. Di Beichan smiled faintly. Shopkeeper, 3 more servings of fruits. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her hand and said. Huang Tiangui nodded slightly. In this mine, I think your recent performance has been very good. If there are no accidents, he stopped talking again, and his eyes fell on Di Beichan and Huang Tinga. Chapter 73:18. F***CK. This guy is really shameless. Gong Jun looked at Huang Tiangui's greedy face, and his eyes were filled with disgust. I've already raised the stakes a few times, but you're still greedy. This kind of guy is a mercenary. Just look at his cunning appearance, and you'll understand. He must want to take advantage of this opportunity to earn some money. When Ziren shook his head, they had long guessed that Huang Tiangui would definitely not be polite with such an opportunity. However, this fellow was simply too greedy. Huang Tiangui's heart was as clear as a mirror as how much they usually sold these fruits for. What they said about giving them to friends was just a disguised request. He was certain that even a consul would not be able to afford such expensive fruits. Huang Tiangui himself would probably feel the pinch if he came here himself. The reason why he was like this now was undoubtedly because the money was paid by someone else, so he didn't feel any heartache at all. The more I look at this guy's face, the more I hate him. Shangwan Yingying couldn't bear it anymore. At this moment, Beichan had increased the price again. Even though they knew that Beichan had a lot of fruits in his possession, these things were indeed very precious. Now that it was taken away by such a fat guy, they felt angry just thinking about it. I think with such a price, even if Beichan and the others did well in the mine, even if they weren't originally from a mine, they could directly buy the position of consul with such a price. That can't be helped. This guy is clearly relying on money. Fortunately, Beichan and the others have money. Ziren spread out his hands. Beichan and the others had already expected such a situation, so when this happened, they were mentally prepared. 3 more servings of fruits. In the Chan returning restaurant, everyone's gaze fell on Di Beichan's table. That was because the momentum was simply too frightening. In just a short time, there were already more than a dozen fruits on the table. Normally, it was already very impressive for someone to order 1 fruit at a sky-high price. Now, there were more than 10 of them. Together with this table of food and wine, it was truly a sky-high price. With such a price, even if it was just a rough calculation, everyone could not help but be stunned. Who are these people? That's too extravagant. I've been to Chun Returning Tower so many times, but this is the first time I've seen such a grand display. Normally, I feel that the people in the city are already rich enough. However, compared to these two people, the difference is huge. Obviously, they were not the ones who were paying. But looking at Di Bei Chen's calm face as he increased the price again and again, their hearts could not help but ache. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Huang Te, whose smile was getting wider and wider, yet he still had not relented. A trace of disgust appeared in her eyes. If it weren't for the fact that she didn't want to completely fall out with him, she would have already fallen out with him. Di Beichen's expression was as usual. He turned a blind eye to the other party's shameless behavior and raised the price one by one until the other party fainted. Huang Tiangue was also shocked by Di Beichen's extravagance. He knew that Di Beichen was very extravagant, but this was the first time he had seen such extravagance. Fortunately, such good luck had fallen on him. This time, when he returned, he could hold his head high. These fruits, not to mention turning into cultivation resources, would definitely shock people if they were exposed to the sun. Chapter 73:19. Looking at the table full of fruits, Di Beichen's calm gaze fell on Huang Tiangue. His voice was as gentle as the sound of nature. Consul Huang, I've always admired you. I'm sure you understand what I mean. Of course, if you have other candidates in mind, I won't force you. Di Beichen smiled faintly. You're a busy person, and I don't want to waste your time. Unlike his previous friendliness, there was now a trace of indifference in his voice. Huang Tiangue was a shrewd person, so how could he not understand the meaning of these words? Di Beichen had already made his stance clear. He was going to raise the price to this point. If he still didn't agree, then so be it. Don't even think about taking any of these fruits away. Shangguan Yingying placed the last plate of fruits on the table and said, Guest, we have all the fruits for today. If you want more, I'm afraid you'll have to wait until tomorrow. Hearing this, a smile appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Yingying's character had always been quite fiery. She must have seen how greedy Huang Tiangue was and couldn't stand it anymore, so she ran over to leave such a sentence. After hearing this, Huang Tiangue completely gave up on this idea. In fact, this kind of harvest had already exceeded his expectations. However, when his gaze fell on Shangguan Yingying, a look of amazement appeared in his eyes. He had already noticed this attendant earlier. Compared to the other attendants, she was undoubtedly much prettier. Walking in the returning Chun Tower was pleasing to the eye. If it was any other day, he would just admire it. After all, this Chun returning tower looked extraordinary, and it would not be easy to make a move against the attendants here. However, things were different now that Di Beichen was here. Since the last time he went back, he had investigated Ji Chuan and Gu Jin's background. The result of the investigation was nothing special, and he didn't find any powerful background. However, after coming into contact with them, he understood that these two people must have some kind of power behind them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for two mine managers to have such a background. The other party was someone with a strong background, and, at the same time, he also had a favor to ask of him. It would be a pity if he didn't make good use of him. I want her. Shangguan Yingying's departing figure was suddenly pulled back. She was startled at first, and then her expression became abnormally ugly. What the hell was this damn guy talking about? Bailey Hongzhuang and Huang Tiangue didn't expect Huang Tiangue to suddenly make such a request. For a moment, they even suspected that they had misheard. I want this woman to accompany me for a night. Huang Tiangue's drooling eyes looked at Shangguan Yingying unscrupulously. This woman was really beautiful. If he could get his hands on her, the taste would be even better. Pa! Shangguan Yingying slapped Huang Tiangue's face. She didn't expect this guy to be so disgusting. He even had ideas about her, especially the other party's unbridled gaze. It made her want to vomit. When Xiren's expression was extremely ugly as he rushed out. Bastard, what did you say? I dare you to say it again. Who are you? Huang Tiangue looked at Ziren, who had suddenly rushed out and was momentarily stunned. However, he quickly realized that this woman was most likely already taken, and this man was naturally the man in front of him. You spoke rudely to my wife, and now you ask who I am? Chapter 73:20. Bang! Ziren did not hold back and punched Huang Tiangue in the eye. In an instant, Huang Tiangue had panda eyes. When the cultivators in the returning Imperial Tower saw this scene, their interest was piqued. Originally, they were unhappy and jealous when they saw Huang Tiangue's greedy gaze. Now that this fellow had stirred up such trouble, it was undoubtedly the best outcome. In any case, they just wanted to see this fellow's unlucky appearance. Gong Jun hurriedly stood up and said to the guests in the restaurant, "Today, this table is Chun Lu's treat. Right now, there are other matters to attend to. I hope that everyone can leave. I'm really sorry." Gong Jun's tone was sincere and his attitude was very good. In addition, everyone was not at a disadvantage, so they all left the returning Chun Tower. The only pity was that they wouldn't be able to see the aftermath of this matter, so they were a little itchy. After everyone left, Gong Jun immediately closed the door of the restaurant. At this moment, Huang Tiangue also reacted. To him, he did not want to offend the Imperial Returning Tower, because he felt that this Imperial Returning restaurant was so extraordinary. Its background must be very impressive. The person he valued was just a waiter, so it shouldn't be a big deal. However, now that he had fallen into such a situation, he could not help but feel a little flustered. Fortunately, he was relieved to see that Di Beichun was still by his side. "I didn't know she was already taken," Huang Tiangue explained, but his eyes were filled with disdain. "It's good enough that I'm interested in her. What can you do?" When Ziren heard this, he became even angrier. How could there be such an arrogant beast in this world? Most importantly, this guy dared to say such words in front of him. Wasn't he looking for a beating? "If I don't kill you today, I'm not Ziren one." Ziren's anger rose in an instant. How dare he have designs on his wife? He must kill him. Bang! The elemental energy within Ziren's body suddenly burst forth, and he struck out with a punch once again. This bastard, he must kill him. Huang Tiangue did not think much of Ziren. As a consul, he still had some power. However, when Ziren rushed over, he suddenly realized that for some reason, he was unable to exert any strength and immediately turned pale with fright. "You actually used poison?" He was sure that he had been poisoned for him to suddenly fall into such a situation. When Shangwan Yingying heard this, she knew that it was Bailey Hongzhuang's doing. Ziren, however, did not care so much at this moment. He punched Huang Tiangue's face, punch after punch after punch. In just a short period of time, Huang Tiangue's face had already turned into a pig's head, and blood was flowing from the corner of his lips. "Ji Chuan, help me deal with this guy, and I'll recommend you for the position of consul." Huang Tiangue looked at Di Beichun. His fighting strength was limited at this moment. Even if Di Beichun and Di Beichun were the same as him, they would not dare to mess around with Di Beichun's background. However, Di Beichun only looked at Huang Tiangue indifferently, and then stepped on his face. He ruthlessly crushed it. Huang Tiangue wanted to say something, but he could not say a word. He widened his eyes. He could not believe that Di Beichun dared to treat him like this. Bailey Hongzhuang also kicked him. She did not hold back at all, and her eyes were filled with disgust. "I already dislike you, and now you dare to speak rudely to Yingying. Are you looking for death?" Chapter 73:21. "You, how dare you do this?" Huang Tiangue didn't speak until Di Beichun retracted his foot. His eyes were still filled with disbelief. These two clearly had a favor to ask of him, but now they actually beat him up for a waiter. Was there something wrong with them? You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Di Beichun shook his head slightly. "Since you're not willing to recommend me to become the consul of another place, then I'll just kill you and take over your position." The reason why he didn't directly attack Huang Tiangue was because he felt that it wouldn't be so troublesome to get information from an acquaintance in the position of consul. He didn't want to keep this guy alive, but it would be more troublesome. Since that was the case, he had to cut his losses in time and eliminate this guy. Huang Tiangue felt a chill run down his spine. His eyes were filled with fear. He never thought that Di Bei-chun would have such thoughts. I was indeed too much before. I promise that as long as you save me now, I'll definitely recommend you to become the new consul. Huang Tingue hurriedly spoke, but the malicious look in his eyes couldn't be concealed. The reason why he was willing to promote Di Bei-chun was because he saw that there were benefits to be gained. This guy actually dared to do such a thing to him. When he got out, he would definitely teach Di Bei-chun a lesson. Consul Huang, when you promise benefits, you should at least be more sincere. Cover up the hatred in your eyes, just like I did before. Bailey Hongzhuang clicked her tongue and shook her head. With your current appearance, you're too careless. I can see through it at a glance. Huang Tiangue was slightly startled. Before he could react to the multiple layers of meaning in Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying's blade had already struck the vital part of his lower body. An earth-shattering scream rang out. Even outside the restaurant, everyone could hear it clearly. Huang Tiangue's face instantly turned red. The veins on his face bulged out from the pain, making him look extremely terrifying. When Xiren and the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but tighten their lower body. Sure enough, when a woman attacked, it was really terrifying. Just thinking about the pain in this vital part of the body was enough to know how painful it was. Bastard, you deserve it, Shangguan Yingying said fiercely. She felt humiliated when she thought about how she was targeted by such a person and how much he had thought about her in such a short time. Xiren, I'll leave it to you. Di Bei-chun didn't look at Huang Tingue anymore. Instead, he pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to the side. It's too bloody. It's better if you don't watch it. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Are you worried that I'll learn from Yingying? Di Bei-chun's face darkened. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Not to mention anything else, Yingying's move had scared her. It was even more unbearable than directly killing the other party. This Huang Tiangue should have something on him as well. Today's business is worth it, Di Bei-chun said slowly as he looked at Gong Jun, who seemed to be in pain. Gong Jun's eyes lit up. The painful expression on his face disappeared in an instant. This guy is so greedy. I think he should have a lot of things. It's indeed worth it. Ha! Gong Jun had already rushed over and took off Huang Tiangue's storage ring. When Huang Tiangue saw how impolite Gong Jun was, he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Shameless. Too shameless. The next day, everything returned to normal. Di Bei-chun and Shangguan Yingying returned to the mine as if nothing had happened. In a chapter 7332. Have you heard? Last night, someone molested a waiter at Chun Returning Restaurant. I wonder what happened after that. Chun Returning Restaurant's background must not be simple. Because of this incident, the people who ate last night did not even have to pay the bill. Think about it. Every table was expensive. In my opinion, Chun Returning Restaurant is rich and imposing. Its background is also very shocking. If it was any other restaurant, it would just be a waiter. Why would they spend so much effort? However, this person is really blind. Of all the places to stir up trouble, he just had to go to Chun Returning Restaurant. He deserves to end up like this. After this incident, the image of the returning imperial restaurant in everyone's mind became even more unfathomable. The background of this restaurant was definitely not simple. Even a waiter inside could not be easily offended. No one knew what would happen if they offended the waiter. However, the scream at that time was still clearly heard by many people. In the mine, everyone saw that Di Bei-chun and Bailey Hongzhuang had returned, but they did not see the consul. They could not help but have all sorts of guesses in their hearts. Even in the tent, Bailey Hongzhuang could hear all sorts of discussions coming from outside. In the past, the consul would stay in the mine for 2 to 3 days. Today was only the second day, and they did not see him. This was naturally a little strange. Master, what do we do now? Xiao He was a little worried. They originally had the idea of pleasing Huang Tiangue. Now, forget about pleasing him. They would directly obliterate the other party. With so many people watching this matter, they had no choice but to explain, this place is not very big. Coupled with Chun Returning Restaurant's influence, we don't need to say anything. This news will quickly spread in the mine. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was as usual. Up until now, no one knew their relationship with Chun Returning Restaurant. As such, as long as they used Chun Returning Restaurant as a cover, everything would become very simple. You can completely shirk the responsibility like this? Xiaobai was in disbelief. Won't the higher-ups investigate? If the people under your command were to take liberties with women, and the matter became known to everyone, would you investigate? Di Beichen asked. Xiaobai shook her head. No, they had already lost so much face. If they were to investigate further, wouldn't they be laughed at again? That's it. Bailey Hongzhuang poured a cup of tea and took a sip. So, we just have to wait for the news. What we need to worry about now is whether the higher-ups will directly appoint someone to be our consul. If the higher-ups directly selected one of them to be the consul, it would undoubtedly be the best. However, if they chose to be parachuted in, they would inevitably have to spend a lot of effort. After seeing Huang Tiangui's face, they really didn't have any expectations for the people above. Seeing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also felt relieved. They were most worried that this matter would affect them. Since it would not affect them, everything else was not a big problem. In less than half a day, the news had already spread all over the mine. Gu Jian, is the news that everyone outside true? Zhou Su did not even bother to knock on the door and directly rushed into the tent with an incredulous expression on his face. Bailey Hongzhuang looked helplessly at the person who came in. Can't you say hello when you come in? We're all men. What's there to care about? Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 73:33. Zhou Su didn't take this matter to heart. Even if you take a bath here, I can still take a bath with you. Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness. This guy's been getting bolder and bolder recently. Come on. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't expect Zhou Su to talk about such a horrifying topic. I dislike you very much. I'll go. Zhou Su rolled his eyes. No, now is not the time to talk about this. I've already heard about Guei Chin Tower. Was it Consul Huang who molested the waiters there last night? You all know? Di Beichen asked. As soon as these words came out, Zhou Su and Lei Jun's expressions became exceptionally strange. It's actually true? Zhou Su raised his voice. The news spread early in the morning, but at first, no one was sure whether it was Consul Huang or not. How is he now? Di Beichen shook his head. I don't know. You don't know? Weren't you with Consul Huang last night? How did I not know about this? Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. We are also worried about this matter. What the hell is going on? Explain it clearly. Zhou Su looked nervous. If something happens to Consul Huang here, we will all be in trouble. Lei Jun looked at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, who looked worried and understood. Consul Huang's life is most likely in danger. It's not easy for the two of you to still be alive. It seems that the backer of this returning Imperial Tower is also reasonable. Hearing this, Zhou Su still did not understand. What do you mean? Yesterday, we didn't expect Consul Huang to suddenly lose his mind and flirt with the waiter. Moreover, it became more and more exaggerated. He even said nonsense in front of the waiter's husband. Bailey Hongzhuang said it simply, but Zhou Su and Zhou Yu could almost imagine the scene at that time. If it was just a young lady, it would be fine. However, she actually dared to say such outrageous words in front of her husband. If it was anyone else, it would be impossible for them to suppress their anger. Wasn't this courting death? And then, at that time, we apologized on behalf of the consul. But on one hand, the other party didn't listen at all. On the other hand, Consul Huang didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it at all. He only felt that he was stronger and even wanted to snatch him away. The other party was very strong. Later, Ji Chuan and I were directly knocked unconscious. This morning, we woke up on the street. At this point, the two of them completely understood. Obviously, Di Beichen and Consul Huang were directly thrown out after being knocked unconscious. But Consul Huang did not appear, so the outcome was obvious. Then it's over. The consul is dead for sure. Zhou Su sighed. There was helplessness between his eyebrows. I really think that the consul is looking for death. Lei Jun, what do you think? You can't casually say such words. If others hear it, we will all be in trouble. Lei Jun's expression was solemn. But I think so too. The consul is dead. Will this matter implicate us? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Lei Jun nodded. The consul is dead. Such a big matter. The higher-ups will definitely send someone to investigate. You two don't need to say more. Others may also be implicated. The consul is really seeking death. It's fine if he wants to bring us along. It's really infuriating. Chapter 73:34. This matter was caused by the consul himself. It has nothing to do with us. Bailey Hongzhuang looked anxious. We have to think of a way. We can't be implicated by this. Lei Jun, you are better at thinking of solutions. What do you think we should do in this situation? Zhou Su turned his gaze to the Lei army. Among them, the Lei army had stayed here for the longest time and could come up with the most ideas. Lei Jun pondered for a moment before saying, the only way now is to expand this news. It's best if everyone knows about it. We have to let everyone know that the consul was the one who brought this upon himself, and it was useless for us to stop him. There is no need for the higher-ups to investigate. The news would reach their ears directly. That was enough. I don't think they will spend too much effort on a drunken consul. Lei Jun looked at Ji Chuan and continued, moreover, now that the consul is dead, it's a good opportunity for you to rise. Take advantage of this opportunity and let everyone recommend you. When the time comes, your chances of success will be very high. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows slightly. Lei Jun was also a smart person, and the idea he came up with was the same as theirs. Indeed, this was the best course of action right now. Xiaohei saw how her master was able to get the other party to help them come up with a plan with just a few words. She was secretly impressed by her master's ability to get the other party to help them count the money they had already thought of. This was probably the situation they were talking about. You guys stay here for now. It won't be good if you guys spread the news. It's best to let others talk about it first. At this moment, Zhou Su also understood that this was a heaven-sent opportunity. As long as Di Beichun could become the next consul, it would be of great help to them. In any case, he was the one with the most hope in the entire mine. If it were anyone else, no one would be convinced. Under such circumstances, Di Beichun and Xiaohei became the most leisurely people. Watching everyone running around, Zhou Su and Xiaohei carried out this matter without anyone knowing. They quietly found a stranger to talk about the matter vividly. It was just like what Qin Yin had seen. Moreover, the consul was as hateful as he could be. No matter how deep Beichun and Xiaohei persuaded him, the consul was so fierce that the two of them were even injured because of the consul. After hearing all this, the managers of the mine couldn't help but feel aggrieved for Di Beichun and Xiaohei. What was bad luck? This was really bad luck. The consul in everyone's eyes, and Xiaohei. If it were them, the situation wouldn't be any better. Originally, this matter made everyone sympathize with Di Beichun and Xiaohei. In addition, the people they arranged took the opportunity to fan the flames and magnify some of the things the consul had done infinitely, which made everyone feel disgusted. 2 days later, Lei Jun and Zhou Su showed smiles on their faces. The matter has been solved. The people in the entire mine already know the whole story. It has nothing to do with you. At that time, even if the people above come to investigate, you don't have to worry at all. You don't have to show up. There is already irrefutable evidence. Lei Jun revealed a smile. After settling this matter, he felt a lot more at ease. Chapter 73:35. This is all thanks to you. Bailey Hongzhuang thanked them. Even though everything was within their expectations, the Lei Jun duo had still put in a lot of effort for this matter. They were also grateful from the bottom of their hearts. Actually, we didn't do anything. Lei Jun waved his hand. After all, you have built a good reputation in the mine. What happened in the number 64 mine made everyone feel grateful to you. In addition, your strength is unmatched. The previous incident with Zhang Sun also gave everyone a better impression of you. Everyone feels that you are different from Yuan Gang, which is why everything has been so easy for us. Lei Jun's words were very honest. Claiming credit was something that anyone would be happy to do. However, this kind of thing was obvious. If the object of this matter was not Di Beichun but Yuan Gang, then all of this would not have happened so easily. No matter what, it's all thanks to you guys. Di Beichun smiled faintly. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze also fell on the two of them. Once they were done with everything, they would not be staying here for too long. She still remembered what happened in the small town. Lu Jin's business had to continue. She had always wanted to find a reliable person so that the business could continue. Both of them needed to find more ways to increase their cultivation resources. Leaving this matter to the two of them was undoubtedly a win-win situation. After this period of time, she also believed that the two of them were reliable people. What is there to thank us for? Zhou Su chuckled. When you become consuls, you can take care of us. We can't ask for anything more. Don't worry, I'll definitely take care of my own people. Di Beichun shook his head. This guy was always thinking about these two things. Hearing these words, Zhou Su also jumped for joy. Ji Chuan, I knew you were a good brother. At this time, Di Beichun could say that he was on the same side. This represented a completely different meaning. In just a few days, the higher-ups had already known the news of Huang Tingui's death and immediately sent people to investigate the situation. Di Beichun and Zhou Su both expected that things would come quickly, so the two of them had been staying in a mine for the past few days without leaving. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner as before. The atmosphere in the mine was very harmonious, but everyone knew that this was just the calm before the storm. When the higher-ups came, they would inevitably conduct a large-scale investigation. Fortunately, this matter was originally a fact. Even if some people had other ideas in their hearts, at this time, the minority obeyed the majority, which was meaningless. Not long after, the three people sent by the higher-ups appeared in the mine. As soon as the three people walked into the mine, Di Beichun's group noticed their difference. This was because the aura emitted by the three of them was much stronger than that of ordinary people. Most of the cultivators' strength, but these three people's is obviously stronger. Most importantly, the disdainful look in their eyes had already revealed their pretentious thoughts. In an instant, everyone came out to greet them. All the managers of the mine gather here. His loud and clear voice reverberated through the mine, clearly falling into everyone's ears. Chapter 73:36. Along with this loud and intimidating voice, the stewards in the mine were all alarmed and rushed out of their tents. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun, and the others walked directly in the direction of the three people. They had to pass today's test. Soon, the stewards sighed with emotion. The stewards of hundreds of mines gathered together. The scale was not small. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the three people in front of her. There were 2 men and 1 woman. Although they looked very young, she could tell that the 3 of them had been cultivating for a long time. Through their clothes and waist tags, she could confirm that the 3 of them were the same as Huang Tiangui. They were all consul of the mine, but they did not belong to the area they were in. Consul Huang has fallen. We need to know the truth. The man on the left swept his gaze across the crowd. His sharp gaze seemed to be able to see through everything. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. The other party's cultivation was also in the elementary celestial stage. Obviously, he was using his aura to oppress them. Because her and Beichun's cultivation was not weaker than the other parties, such an aura did not affect them much. However, for the other cultivators, this pressure was not so easy to bear. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly glanced at Di Beichun. The latter had long expected such a situation and pretended to be unable to bear it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lowered eyes flashed with a smile. Beichun had learned medical skills from her. Usually, he did not use it much. However, at a time like this, the effect was completely revealed. His expression of being unable to bear it was extremely realistic and did not seem like a disguise at all. Looking at the great pressure on everyone's faces, the man snorted coldly. He seemed to be very satisfied with such an outcome. The arrogance in his expression was even more obvious. Something happened to the consul in your station. All of you have an unshirkable responsibility. Now, I'll give you a chance. As long as you hand over the culprit of this matter, your mistakes can be forgotten. However, if you don't tell us, once we find out, the outcome will be completely different. The pressure emitted by the consul suppressed everyone, and everyone's faces turned pale. However, they had already discussed what to do before, and no one had any thoughts of changing their minds. As a matter of fact, This matter had nothing to do with Di Beichen. Even if they came forward now and investigated the matter thoroughly, the consul would not kill them indiscriminately. In this way, he had angered the two of them, and there would be countless troubles in the future. Seeing that no one stood out to speak, the man was a little surprised. Usually, when something like this happened, as long as they asked, these stewards would jump out one after another to show off. They were well aware of the schemes of the managers of these mines. However, the performance before them had indeed exceeded their expectations. You, the man pointed at a random person. Tell me what you know. The steward who was pointed at was stunned at first. Then, without any scruples, he told the truth as he knew the truth. After the man told the whole story, the three consul could not help but look at each other. They knew that Huang Tiangue had always been unreliable, greedy, and lecherous. Fortunately, he had some skills and was not someone who did not have any eyesight. Otherwise, he would not have been able to get to the position of consul. End of chapter. Chapter 73-37. Before they came, they had heard some rumors, but none of them took it to heart. At least, they believed that with Huang Tiangue's status, he wouldn't do something so embarrassing. However, when they heard the whole story from the steward's mouth and the process of the incident was described very clearly, their faces did not look too good. Such a way of dying was simply too shameful. It was one thing for Huang Tiangue to embarrass himself, but he had to use such a method to embarrass all of them. Are you serious? The man stared at the steward in front of him. His sharp gaze was filled with endless pressure. It was as if the man dared to lie, his life would immediately be forfeited. The steward looked nervous and shook his head repeatedly. Consul, I'm not lying. After the man saw that this person's gaze didn't seem to be lying, he moved his gaze away from him. The latter also quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Is there anyone else who wants to add to this? Silence. The group of managers all fell silent. This was the truth, and no one needed to add anything. Who were the two people accompanying Consul Huang that day? Come out, the man said sternly. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang stood up together. When the man saw the two of them step out, a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. Consul Huang was drunk and caused trouble, but the two of you didn't stop him. I think you did it on purpose. Without any warning, the man's palm shot towards Di Beichen. Tang Yuan stopped. The man in the middle who had been silent all this while suddenly attacked and blocked the man's attack. Tang Yuan looked at him with some confusion. This matter is inseparable from the two of them. What's wrong with you? You have heard the whole story clearly. If this is the truth, then this matter has nothing to do with the two of them. I know that you and Huang Tiangue were friends, but he's already dead. You don't have to implicate others. These two people didn't do anything wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the man in the middle. She thought that the three of them were the same kind of people. She didn't expect one of them to be so reasonable. However, this was also good, lest things develop in a worse direction. We will investigate this matter thoroughly. If everything is really like this, then so be it. However, if I find out that someone is trying to deceive us, then the consequences will not be so simple. Tang Yuan's expression was ice cold. His gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Li Qie. It was obvious that his hatred had yet to dissipate. That day, the three of them stayed in Huang Tiangue's tent. As the consul of this area, Huang Tiangue naturally had a place to live, and the place he lived in was better than the others. However, he didn't come here often, and almost every time he came out to have fun, so the number of times he stayed here was also very few. On this day, the entire mine was exceptionally quiet. Even the sounds of beating and scolding the miners were restrained, making it seem exceptionally peaceful. Zhou Su was also worried that something would happen in the middle of the journey, so they couldn't relax at all. In the end, they simply stayed with Di Beichen. No matter what happened next, they would be able to deal with it immediately. Don't worry too much. This matter has nothing to do with us. Even if they investigate, the result will be the same. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Zhou Su and said, Who said I was worried? Zhou Su said,